Hello, I'm Avalanka. I'm Australian. No, I'm actually American. Born and raised in the United States. I'm Avalanker. Google Avalanker. Check out my music. Alright. Let's play some STARCRAFT 2.
So the clock is ticking tonight on Israel's truce in Gaza, as many debate whether the ceasefire should be made permanent. Others argue that Israel must be allowed to finish the job of eradicating Hamas. I'm now joined by Professor Alan Dershowitz, author of War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism, and to debate him, the Palestinian-American columnist Omar Badar. Well, welcome to both of you. Alan Dershowitz, let me start with you. Obviously, your book, very timely. I've spoken a lot in the last couple of months of the moral quandary I feel about what is going on in Gaza. I have no moral quandary about what happened on October the 7th. It was an appalling terror attack. I have no quandary about Israel's right and duty to defend itself. The quandary I have is whether what is going on in Gaza is a proportionate response given the massive civilian death toll and given that so many of them are children. Do you understand that moral quandary? And what is your response to it?
I fully understand it, and I blame it 100% on Hamas, which uses children as human shields. It has a strategy. Its supporters call it the CNN strategy. I'm more direct. I call it the dead baby strategy. What Hamas does is they kill as many Israeli Jews as possible, knowing that Israel is going to have to respond by going after their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets. And so they hide their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets among babies and children and civilians. And then when Israel responds and tries to conduct a military operation to prevent recurrence of these barbarisms, they bring the dead babies in front of CNN and the New York Times. And the world, of course, sheds tears, as we all shed tears whenever we see a dead baby. And the world turns against Israel. And then Hamas does it again and again and again. It's been doing it for 20 years with great success because the media plays
Shut the fuck up, Dershowitz, you fucking piece of shit. This guy got O.J. Simpson, the guy who cut his wife's head off and found not guilty.
And the police,
so fuck
in an
this
attempt
guy.
to stop me from shooting, or accidentally to shoot and kill you under British law, under American law, under
Dershowitz
Sharia
is a
law.
great lawyer, but
The
he's a total
responsible
piece of
person
shit
is
human
not
being.
the person whose bullet
But
killed
if I was on trial for murder,
hostage.
I'd hire
it's the
him.
hostage taker who's guilty of murder.
Okay.
So yes, there's a moral conundrum, but Hamas is responsible for causing it.
Okay, Omar Badar, I mean, there's no doubt that the scale of what Hamas did on October the 7th was so overwhelming and horrendous that Israel was always going to respond like this. Hamas knew that. And
One of the things you got to know, you get in trouble, get yourself a Jew lawyer.
How did that serve the Palestinian people? How does what Hamas did and the scale that it did it, knowing what the response would be, knowing thousands of innocent Palestinians would die very quickly?
Want to marry a rich girl? Get yourself a Jew broad.
In Israel. How did that help the Palestinian people?
I think there's a bigger question here as far as context is concerned, which is that the single biggest terrorist organization in all of Palestine and Israel is known as the Israeli government. And the military wing of this terrorist organization, which is Orwellianly named the Defense Forces of Israel, has engaged in massive war crimes for decade after decade against Palestinians, engaging in the mass killing of Palestinian civilians, in land theft, in denial of water. I mean, just the list of atrocities goes on and on and on. And if we want to just go by a timeline, a question might be, Why did the terrorist government of Israel think it can impose decade after decade of occupation and siege on Palestinians and deny them any prospect for a better future, and not think that there's going to be a reaction of sorts? So we have this a little bit backwards. We have this arbitrary starting point of an attack by Hamas, which, had it been confined to military targets, could have been construed as an act of legitimate resistance. But because it also included attacks, horrendous attacks on Israeli civilians, obviously these kinds of acts are indefensible. But ultimately, we are talking about a situation in which Israel is initiating violence, in which Israeli terrorism dwarfs anything that Hamas has ever done. And we're watching that even expand to a more monstrous scale. Now we're talking about an apartheid government that is engaging literally in the mass starvation of a civilian population and mass terrorism, killing them by the tens of thousands. And the question is, has it gone too far? I shudder to live in a world where that's even a question. Of course, these kinds of atrocities have to come to an end.
Let me go back to Alan. I mean, this is the problem, Alan, that I think Israel has in terms of global opinion here, especially from America, which obviously will play a key role. If, as the report suggests, once this temporary pause is over, they start barreling through the south of Gaza, it does beg the question, well, what is going to happen at the end of this? Is the military plan to simply level the whole of Gaza to the ground, with perhaps 50 to 100,000 or more
dumb British
civilians killed in the process? And is there any guarantee of two things? One, that you actually get rid of Hamas by doing that.
Hamas.
Because at the moment they can't say. I've already interviewed.
They can't say.
They can't tell you how many.
They can't tell you. They can't tell you.
They don't know, right? And it may be they've all disappeared. But is that part of the military plan?
I just
and if
can't do it. I just
what's
can't.
The plan after
I just
this?
can't do it.
What happens to all the displaced Palestinian people? They've got no homes to go back to. And how do you avoid the obvious, in my opinion, consequence of this, which is just a massive increase in radicalization from all those who've seen their relatives blown to pieces?
Well, the plan Israel has had since 1948 has been a two-state solution. It was offered to the Palestinians by the UN. They said no. In 1967, again, they said no. In 1990, 2000, 2001, 2007, in Gaza, they ended the occupation, and then Hamas, by a bloody military coup, took over. I haven't seen a single sign of protest calling for a two-state solution. Hamas is against the two-state solution in its charter. It wants to eliminate Israel completely from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Free of what? Free of Jews. And then the signs also say, we want to clean the world of Jews. That's what the Nazis said. They called Jews dirty and vermin. So the answer has to be a two-state solution, and a peaceful two-state solution. But you can't have a two-state solution with Hamas, because Hamas's charter is against it. Maybe the Palestinian Authority, yes. So I'm in favor of doing what the United States did after the Second World War. They totally destroyed Nazism. Lots of people died, lots of civilians died, but there wasn't an increase in radicalism. The German people realized that getting rid of the Nazis was the best thing that could happen to the German people.
Okay, let me take that point.
And I'm hoping that the Palestinian people will realize that the same thing is true. If Hamas is ended, the Palestinian people have a great future. Gaza can be Singapore in the Mediterranean instead of a place where terrorism thrives instead of feeding hungry people.
Omar, I mean, do you believe there's any future for Gaza that involves Hamas at this stage?
I think that's unavoidable. I mean, honestly, just the onslaught of untruths from Alan Dershowitz. I mean, the only person who has less regard for truth than Donald Trump is perhaps Dershowitz, and it's hard to know where to begin to respond to all of this.
That's true.
Let me just say, let me just say, yeah, well, I'm willing to back it up with actual facts. So here we go.
Well,
first of all, on the question of Palestinian human shields,
what did I say
here we
that
are.
was wrong?
If let me point it all out to you. Here, listen up. First of all, on the question of human shields,
he said, listen up, motherfucker.
That Hamas hides in civilian areas. That's as a result of the imbalance of power, where Israel has fighter jets that fly in the sky and a massive regular military force. But the issue of human shields, the definition of human shields is holding civilians against their will and putting them in front of you in combat to deter enemy fire. And the only party in this conflict that has ever done that, documented by major human rights organizations and a matter of fact, is actually the Israeli military, using Palestinian civilians, including children, as human shields. That was a matter of
No,
policy
you don't
from
use people
2006
as
till
human shields.
2005.
You're either
The
a
Israeli
human
Supreme
shield
Court
or
said
you're
that
not a
has to
human
come to
shield.
an
You
end
cannot
in
be used
2005.
as a
The
human
Israeli
shield,
military,
because if you're used as a human
protested
shield,
that decision
you
because
are
it was
a
very
human
useful for them
shield.
to continue using Palestinian civilians as human shields. And even
You
though
cannot be
the
used as a
Israeli
human
Supreme
shield.
Court
You're
banned
either a
it,
human
the
shield
Israeli
or
military
you're not a human
continues to
shield.
use it to this day. There have been numerous occasions documented by Human Rights Watch, by
Fuck's
Amnesty
sake.
International, and other organizations. And it tells you what this lie is ultimately about. Because if it is true that Palestinian militants do not care about the lives of Palestinian children, then what is the point of the Israeli military using Palestinian children as human shields when they are in these confrontations? So that is simply
They
a lie.
don't use them.
It is
That's a
okay,
lie.
let me-
They just don't use
It
them.
is
You're making it
gaslighting
up.
to blame Palestinians for their own
Okay, let me get a
deaths.
final quick
you're
response,
making
please,
it up.
Alan. A
Yeah.
quick response, Alan.
If the Palestinian terrorists put down their arms, there would be peace. If Israel put down its
They
arms,
put down
there
their
would be
arms, they would
genocide
not be able to
of the kind that
pick anything
occurred
up.
on October 7th. Israel cannot
That's a
put
terrible
down
joke.
its arms because we know what Hamas did on the 7th. They would have done to every Israeli if they had the ability to do that.
Okay.
And that's why Israel must
Israeli
rid
land
itself
theft
of
is
Hamas.
ongoing.
And that will benefit the world, and that will benefit the Palestinians, and that will lead to a two-state solution, which is not what
Throughout
my distinguished
No, I'm
opponents
sorry.
I
my
have to-
distinguished
The
opponents
two-state
want
solution, the two-state
the end of
solution
Israel.
argument is nonsense. Throughout the entire so-called peace process, when Israel was pretending to be engaged in a peace process, support for Palestinian violence simply disappeared. And in spite of that, Israeli land theft continued unabated, building more and more settlements
Disappeared.
throughout
That was
the
the
entirety of the
Intifada.
West Bank.
Gentlemen,
The
So this
we've run out
Intifada
of time. I'm
resulted-
sorry.
No,
The
that is leading up to the
Intifada occurred
Intifada.
right after the offer of
Gentlemen,
a two-state
yes.
solution.
Gentlemen,
what you're
I have
saying
to
is
leave
a
it there.
Israel
total
has no
lie.
interest in allowing
Omar,
Palestinians
Alan,
to be
I'm
free or
sorry.
establish a state.
We've run out of time. I appreciate you both joining me. It's an important debate. We'll keep having it.
Thank you.
Please, both of you, come back again. I appreciate it.
The minerals have up and gone. Mineral field depleted.
All right, let's go to the next video. Let's listen to the stupid ass dummies at MSNBC, this fake
Further
news,
this conversation is former
state-controlled
Israeli Consul
propaganda.
General in New York, Ambassador Alon Pincus, and independent journalist Noga Tarnopolsky.
About
to
another
tell us
piece of
what's
shit,
happening on the
Netanyahu,
ground there. We've had
who
her on
should
to
hopefully
cover,
be killed soon.
She's covered the conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians for more than 2 decades. First, I want to start with you, Alon. How likely is it that somebody as senior as Benjamin Netanyahu would not have seen this?
Personally, I hope
Well,
fucking
it's likely
Israel
that
and
he hasn't
Palestine
seen
are
it
both
because
just
it
fucking
was
annihilated,
blocked,
and we don't have to
several
deal with any of their
echelons,
fucking problems anymore.
Under him.
fucking annoying.
But that
I'm a
doesn't,
good Christian boy.
absolve him
I got
of
no-
the responsibility,
I
because
really don't care about those
the reason
races of
they
people.
ignore this stems or
Survival of
is
the fittest. If you're
derived,
fit enough to survive, hey,
from a policy that he dictated.
it's fine
and
by
that was
me.
that
Do whatever you
Hamas
gotta
is
do.
deterred,
Just
that
leave
Hamas
me
does
and my
not
people the
pose
fuck
a
out of it.
major military
Stop
threat,
asking us for aid and
that
protection.
Hamas
Save your
intends to
asses.
keep the status quo, and that strengthening Hamas via funneling funds and endorsements from several Gulf states.
You want your own state?
is
Be able
a
to
recipe,
protect your own state
that
by
he
yourself.
endorses
If you can't
and
protect your own state by
promotes
yourself,
in order to weaken the
maybe
Palestinian
that's
Authority.
nature saying that your
So
people should not be,
So Katie, the possibility
you know,
that he hasn't
around
seen the
anymore.
document is very high. That in no way absolves or exempts him from accountability and responsibility for the policy that led to.
Is that
people
anti-Semitic and
ignoring that
Islamophobic? Yes.
It also lines up with something that we heard in the days after October 7th.
What are
Noga,
you
and
gonna
I
do
spoke
about it?
this, which is the information from Egypt. Egypt claiming that they warned Benjamin Netanyahu something was happening, and Netanyahu ignored it. Netanyahu denied this, but that reporting still persists. What is the reaction in Israel to this New York Times report?
The report has been mentioned during the course of the day, but because the war relaunched or restarted today, that has been much of the focus. Though I have to say the fact of this document making waves across the sea in the United States has been the focus of the mentions that it has gotten here, as if something we've known here in Israel is now being heard abroad.
The discomfort, that's a nice way of putting it, with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Discomfort
where does it stand
in my
right now?
asshole.
How likely is it? I mean, every day that the war goes on, I think
She's got
it's
discomfort in her
Benjamin Netanyahu's
asshole because
mind,
I
he can
fucked
hold
her in
on
the
to
ass
power
last night.
longer. It's more likely he'll
Really
be able
hard.
to say if he wins the war, if he routes out Hamas, if
I
he gets
told her,
enough
don't worry,
hostages
everybody
back.
bleeds the first
Is
time.
that the
No
reality on the
reason
ground?
to be
Are
ashamed.
people turning toward him more now or less?
Is that the question for me?
Yeah, Noga.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I agree with you. I think he is
Well,
clearly
I have to
acting
tell
like
you,
someone who thinks
I have
he
to
can
tell
ride this
you.
out. And in fact, he's gone back to his old MO, right? Today he spent quite a bit of the day telling Israelis that he stood up to the United States. He stood up to Secretary of State Blinken, who's been visiting, that returning to the war is his decision, although it appears likely that it really was Hamas's decision. But I don't have a sense that Israelis are forgetting his responsibility or any of the top echelons that had responsibility just yet. There was a really terrible, in the heartbreaking sense, protest today of bereaved family members. So not family members of hostages, have family members who have lost their loved ones across from the Knesset today, and they were calling for him to simply be ousted.
Alon, the reason I focus so much on Benjamin Netanyahu is it's such an important question for what happens after the war, after the fighting is done, and whether there's a two-state solution, what happens next in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies have been adamant that a two-state solution is not possible. The U.S. is saying that's the only way out of this. So my question is, if he survives or if he doesn't survive, what do you predict comes out of it? Is it a more conservative government, even more conservative than him, or does Israel go back to a more moderate government and a leader that might be more open to negotiating a peace that includes a free Palestinian state?
Okay, so let me try and answer. You asked 5 separate questions, Katie. I'll try and answer them in bullet form. He's not going to survive this. There's no way in the world that he's going to survive this. Now, this may take 1 month, it may take 4 months, it may take 6 months.
It may take 7 months, it may take 8 months, it may take 9 months, it may take 10 months, it may take 11 months.
To overwhelm him and overwhelm his coalition, which in turn will bring him down. The mechanics and how exactly that will happen, I don't know, and I don't want to go into that speculation. Now, the question that you asked, what happens if he's gone? Well, if he stays, there's no two-state solution, there's no political process, there's nothing. Okay, we go back to the status quo ante, pre-October 7th. But if he doesn't survive, as I think he won't, the question, Katie, is whether or not there is a new government from within the existing parliament, or whether or not a new election is called. That changes the equation. Now, a new government, which I think will be formed, which would probably be, let's call it centrist, even if it tilts slightly to the right, would entertain ideas from the U.S. or inborn or ingrained ideas about the day after in Gaza, short of a two-state solution, but realizing or being cognizant that October 7th was such a devastating event and such a point of inflection in Israeli policy toward the Palestinians, that even with the anger, even with the animosity, even with the vengefulness that exists now, people are realizing that status quo cannot be sustained.
Mineral field depleted. The upgrade is done. Our army be scrapped. Hey, help your friend.
Great team win. Great team win. Alright, let's put on something that's a little longer.
This week, a special edition of the Listening Post. We're looking at Europe, digging into the discourse there.
Here's some
Coverage
Al
of
Jazeera
Israel's
news.
war on Gaza. Beginning in Germany, Israel's most dependable ally in the EU. Shows of support
Would
for
you have ever
Palestinians
imagined
have
that
been suppressed.
Israel's most dependent ally would be Germany?
France, where much of the coverage is
What
focused,
a
and where
world.
the debate on Gaza has been weaponized against minorities. Plus, the outlier that is Ireland, where there has been probing criticism of Israel's actions from politicians.
When does Palestine get the right to defend itself?
Free Palestine.
If the United States
Free
has aided,
Palestine.
abetted, and helped finance
Whoa,
Israel's
whoa,
campaign of ethnic cleansing in
whoa.
Gaza, the European Union has been complicit as well. Like their
Nobody's
allies in
hated
Washington,
Jews this
EU
much since the
officials have provided their
40s.
support for Israel's war, refusing to condemn it the way they have Hamas's attacks or call for a ceasefire. And while there is significant empathy for Israel among Europeans, there is also growing public opposition to this war, along with demands that their governments do more to stop it. Across the EU, there are different shades in the news coverage, depending on which country you're in. In this special episode, we will examine the discourse around the conflict in 3 countries. We'll look at France, where some television news channels have distorted the debate to suit their own agendas. And Ireland, where support for the Palestinians is more widespread and far more tolerated.
Ireland.
But our starting point is Germany. It's the EU's largest economy, a country where historical guilt over the Holocaust has created one of the most pro-Israel media climates around, and where dissenting voices are routinely censored or intimidated into silence.
In diesem Moment gibt es für Deutschland nur einen Platz.
Deutschland.
Platz an der Seite Israels.
I Deutscher.
Germany's relationship with Israel is unlike that of
Achtung.
any other country.
Achtung.
It's
I
a relationship that
Deutscher.
goes beyond loyalty and support. Ensuring Israel's security and existence is part of what Germans call Staatsräson, the country's
Staatsräson. The German language sounds.
Sicherheit ist deutsche Staatsräson.
German language is the fucking most fun language to listen to.
The genocide of almost 6
And
million
speak.
European Jews during the Holocaust informs every aspect of the country's public.
Those
and
Germans
political
are
discourse
some
around
innovative
Israel.
people, man.
For many
Germans.
Germans, Israel is above
I'm not even German
reproach.
at all. I have zero German blood, but they are a fascinating people. An amazing, amazing people.
Support for Israel in Germany.
My stepfather was German-Irish. He was a great man. German-Irish, like Tom Hagen from The Godfather. I love him and I miss him.
And killed
God
and
bless
treated
his
so
soul.
badly historically, now have their kind of own state and everything is fine. It's not so much that Israel is supported in Germany because we come to terms with its past, but it's a shortcut for not really coming to terms with our past.
When Germany categorized Israel's national security as their reason of state, they essentially wanted to solve their problem of being described as the original anti-Semites of the world. They want to put the past behind them. So Germany, instead of listening to their actual Jewish citizens, instead of fighting anti-Semitism in a way that protects all Jewish people, what it has done instead is take a vehemently and staunch pro-Israel stance, where they essentially can do no wrong.
In this atmosphere of unwavering political support for Israel, German media outlets have also shown pro-Israel bias in their reporting. This is reflected in the one-sidedness of talk show debates.
Die Hamas-Terroristen haben es ganz bewusst darauf angelegt, unschuldige Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten wirklich zu ermorden. Ich habe nicht den Eindruck, dass Israel es bewusst darauf anlegt, Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten zu töten.
For Bild, the biggest newspaper in Germany, Hamas freed Israeli hostages, while Israel freed Palestinian terrorists. And mainstream outlets from ARD, the public broadcaster, to media conglomerate Axel Springer have issued strict guidance to their journalists on this story.
ARD sent an internal memo to its journalists, where in it states that if any civilian deaths take place, it has to be stated as these civilians are being used as human shields. And this was provocated by Hamas.
Es kann natürlich auch daran liegen, dass die Hamas darauf setzt, dass viel Zivilbevölkerung im Norden des Gazastreifens verbleibt und dann sozusagen als menschliches Schutzschild wirkt.
And if that's the only image that Germans see, then the public are not going to understand the actual scale of this war and just how much violence has been inflicted on an innocent civilian population.
Axel Springer has support for Israel written into its work contract. So if you work as a journalist for one of their outlets, say Bild Zeitung, which is the biggest newspaper in the German media landscape, or Die Welt, you are kind of committed already from the get-go, regardless of what your personal views might be, to report in a pro-Israeli way. What that often translates to is literally outright support of Israel government policies.
Bild newspaper is the most widely read newspaper in Germany. And its journalistic standards, if one can call them that, are pretty unspeakable. Then you have Die Welt, which is slightly more highbrow.
I read the Renegade Tribune.
Ideologically, it's cut from the same cloth.
Google it.
And then you also have
I really don't read it.
Which recently ran an article about Greta Thunberg. You can only call it a hit piece,
Greta Thunberg.
Just this
cunt.
absurd
She's a cunt.
Personal attack on her because she has recently been quite vocal about her support for Palestine.
We tried to speak to ARD and Axel Springer, but neither outlet granted us an interview or a statement. And those in Germany who go against the grain on this story risk being blacklisted or sidelined. Journalists challenging the prevailing narrative in newsrooms have been fired. Exhibitions, workshops and conferences in the cultural sphere have been cancelled or delayed. Peaceful protests have been either banned, criminalized or violently repressed. Now, Germany has one of Europe's largest Palestinian diasporas, but it's also become one of the most censored places for anyone who expresses solidarity with Palestinians or anyone who speaks out against Israel's war crimes in Gaza.
There's an increasing climate of censorship in Germany in the last 5 to 6 weeks, a climate of kind of Botox McCarthyism. It's really quite intense. Kufiyas have been forbidden in schools, like symbols of the Palestinian flag, symbols of Palestinian identity have been forbidden. Anything that can basically be interpretable as
different than Nazi Germany,
and that's a very sort of wide range of things in the German society, has been kind of damned.
Gewalt und Hass auf den Straßen. Islamisten fordern das Kalifat und sind sich mit Rechts- und Linksextremisten nur in einem einig: Israel und die Juden sind an allem schuld.
I don't believe Germany has come to terms with its past, because what they're doing is stifling conversation, stifling any progress
you
or
fucking
any sort of critical discourse. And now, because the spotlight has been shone on Germany and German discourse, more and more people are realizing that this is not fighting anti-Semitism. This is attacking Palestinians.
Essentially, Palestinian existence is offensive to many in Germany. That's the simplest way to put it, really. Because Palestinians interfere with this utopian narrative that the Holocaust was at least slightly balanced out by the foundation of Israel. In terms of the moral and cultural identity that Germany promotes of itself, it's hard for Palestinians to find a place which doesn't just involve demonization or erasure.
Germany is the EU state where debate on the war in Gaza is most heavily censored. France may be the country where the discourse is at its most intense and volatile. France is home to both Europe's largest community of Jews and its biggest Muslim population. So its citizens are more invested in this conflict than most, especially since it has been fanning the flames of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia there. The Macron government has been strident about which side it's on, supporting bans placed on pro-Palestine demonstrations by local authorities, and much of the media have effectively taken the same view. News outlets owned by conservative billionaires have been peddling Israeli talking points and weaponizing this war to go after some familiar targets. Immigrants, Islam, and the political left.
Billions and
The Listening
billions and
Post's
billions of
Enoch
dollars
Shiravi
together.
now on some of the factors that feed into the intensity around France's debate on the Israel-Gaza war.
I got nothing against conservatives.
October 10th, 3 days after Hamas's attack on Israel, and France's most watched news channel, BFM TV, is reporting an incendiary claim that among Hamas's victims were 40 infants.
Ils ont dénombré pas moins de 40 enfants qui ont été exécutés, éventrés. Parmi eux, des bébés.
The reporter making that claim, a claim which was soon disproven, was not one of BFM's own. He worked for I-24 News, an Israeli pro-Netanyahu channel that has the same owner as BFM, the French-Israeli billionaire Patrick Drahi.
Big fat
It was
milkers.
I-24 News that first reported the dead baby's claim.
Babies. Their heads cut off. That's what they said.
Throughout this war, BFM has relied on I-24 News for much of its coverage, and it shows.
BFM TV has acted as a message relay medium for the Israeli military. A lot of space was given to a representative of the army, and that gave him a platform to spread propaganda.
L'hôpital Al-Shifa à Gaza est effectivement l'épicentre, le centre névralgique de l'activité du Hamas.
The fact that there is a through line from a propaganda channel like I-24 News to a French news channel which is required to cover the news impartially is an ethical problem. I don't even dare to imagine the reaction in France if we had a 24-hour outlet that broadcast content from a Russian channel. There's impunity when it comes to Israel.
Senior editorial staff at BFM have themselves taken issue with the channel's coverage, complaining to management about a lack of balance.
I don't like your
Among
channel's
their misgivings,
coverage.
the repeated interviews with
You
a
better
certain
cover your
Julien
channel
Bahoul
better, man. Make better coverage on your channel. I don't like your channel coverage.
Described to viewers as a French-Israeli living in Tel Aviv, or a specialist in Israeli society, Bahoul is in fact a former spokesperson for the Israeli military, as well as a former journalist for I-24 News. BFM did not respond to our request for comment. However, some of those disgruntled journalists at the channel say its reporting has begun to improve. Coverage of the war by France's publicly funded news outlets and some of its newspapers has been more even-handed. But that still leaves plenty of others in an increasingly right-wing media landscape pushing some dubious, divisive narratives.
I've often had the impression that the French media were telling us a story of civilization against barbarism.
Rien n'est plus monstrueux que de vouloir expliquer la barbarie.
Several commentators have told us we absolutely cannot compare a child killed by Hamas on October 7 and a baby killed by Israeli bombings in Gaza.
On ne peut pas comparer le fait d'avoir tué des enfants délibérément en attaquant comme le fait le Hamas et le fait de tuer des enfants involontairement en se défendant comme le fait Israël.
La manière dont ils ont été tués, elle est différente et elle part de notre inhumanité ou de notre humanité.
What has greatly affected the media coverage is that there are very, very few Palestinian voices on TV panels. In most cases, there are none. We are invisible in the French media landscape, and so there are no voices to provide a counter-narrative, to correct lies, to correct an analysis that has dehumanized the Palestinian cause. Instead, for 2 or 3 weeks, we found ourselves in an endless debate about who considers Hamas as a terrorist group, who does not, who condemns it, who does not, without ever going into the real issues in any depth.
Nous sommes en France.
Since 2015 in France, we have been very sensitive to the risk of Islamist attacks. And what we saw on October 7th reminded us of the attacks we've had in France. So, it was the nature of October 7th that led to it being interpreted in that way. Even so, all opinions are represented in the French media as they are in most Western media and as I would hope at Al Jazeera as well.
J'ose espérer à Al Jazeera.
The discourse in France over the war in Gaza is unique because of 2 factors, one historical, the other demographic. There was France's role in the World War II Holocaust, when the government installed by the Nazi occupation helped deport an estimated 75,000 Jews to the death camps. And modern-day France is home to Europe's largest populations of both Jews and Muslims. That demands a delicate approach on the part of the Macron government, which for the most part has been missing.
Macron's Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin set the tone, quickly imposing a nationwide ban specifically on pro-Palestine protests, citing a risk of, quote, public order disturbances.
Guy for the job.
France's top court later watered down that policy, which demonstrators had ignored anyway, risking arrest in their thousands. Darmanin's lopsided approach towards bigoted attacks has also riled people. Since early in the war, he has toured French TV studios, sharing government figures on the surge in anti-Semitic incidents. It took weeks of pressure from Muslim community leaders before Darmanin published the stats for Islamophobia, which has also spiked. Multiple right-wing voices in the media have been using the rise in anti-Semitism to delegitimize pro-Palestine protesters and to demonize Muslims.
Il faut le dire, pardon de l'exprimer de façon peut-être un peu brutale, il y a un antisémitisme couscous.
During the war, the issue of Islamophobia has somewhat disappeared from the coverage. What's more, there are Islamophobic media outlets in France. The most scandalous is CNews, owned by the billionaire Vincent Bolloré, who is a Catholic fundamentalist. He has become extremely powerful, and his news outlets spread Islamophobia.
Répandent l'islamophobie.
Sur CNews. On CNews, hosts like Pascal Prod or Sonia Mabrouk always emphasize that Muslims can't integrate, that they can't understand the values of the French Republic.
La haine du juif, la haine de l'Occident, et donc la haine de la France. C'est la guerre de civilisation, vraiment.
These media personalities read the Israel-Palestine conflict as the expression of an incompatibility between democracy and the Arab-Muslim world.
The coverage by these far-right news outlets has argued that if we are pro-Palestinian, we are necessarily anti-Semitic, and drawing links with theories about terrorism and Islamism. But we must not forget that many people from immigrant backgrounds in Europe come from the history of decolonization. We are facing one of the last colonial conflicts in the world, and so it's normal that people who come from these anti-colonial struggles rally around the Palestinian cause.
Rallie à la cause palestinienne.
There is one country in Europe that hasn't lined up behind Israel, the closest thing the EU has to an outlier, Ireland. Its government has used words like disproportionate to describe Israel's bombing of Gaza, terms like collective punishment, and opposition politicians there
the Irish hate the Jews for?
Way back in 1980, Ireland became the first EU government to call for Palestinian statehood. There is an affinity with Palestinians that is rooted in a shared history of colonialism, occupation, and division under British rule. Ireland's political consensus on Palestine is, for the most part, reflected in its media. News outlets have provided the kind of journalism that, while hardly radical, cannot be found almost anywhere else in Europe, giving space to both Israelis and Palestinians. The Listening Post's Tarek Nafa now on how the war on Gaza is playing out across Irish politics and media.
It's genocide, openly declared and carried out by the apartheid state of Israel.
The Irish position is somewhat of an outlier amongst European nations. Ireland has been quite vocal about calling for an end to what's going on the ground.
Would you accept the accusation by the Irish government that that seems to have been really driven by revenge?
There is a lot of criticism from Irish politicians of the Israeli offensive in Gaza and the overall position of the Israelis when it comes to the West Bank. So the media tends to reflect that.
The debate around Palestine in Ireland is unlike almost anywhere else in Europe. You can hear it in the language used by Prime Minister Leo Varadkar.
But I have huge sympathy for the Palestinian people. They've been horribly treated now for 75 years. And
it's evident in the positions held across the political spectrum.
when does Palestine get the right to defend itself?
Tongue fixed, buddy.
In the voices you hear on the streets, and it's echoed in the Irish media. Their approach to the story and the questions they're asking.
If you are killing people who are of a particular nationality or of a particular ethnicity, that is the very legal definition of genocide.
Absolutely not.
It is.
We are not.
The coverage of Israel and the mechanizations of the Israeli government have been quite impartial. I've written opinion pieces that have called for a ceasefire straight away and for the carnage to stop. That's controversial in other jurisdictions.
All right, things are getting interesting in this battle. We got a war,
this is a
baby.
normal, logical thing to call for.
I wouldn't necessarily say anything's radical about it. The position is Irish people have compassion for what is happening in Gaza when they see dead children, dead doctors, dead nurses, dead civilians. There's no position in Ireland that is critical of Israel's right to defend itself or Israel's right to exist or anything like that. There is the same amount of compassion for those who are the victims of Hamas's savage attack. It's just that I think the feeling in Ireland is that the innocent civilians in Gaza shouldn't pay the price for what Hamas has done.
Ireland's affinity with Palestine is shaped by the country's colonial past and a shared history of resistance to British rule. Ireland was Britain's oldest colony. The tools of control Britain used there, suppression, violence and division, informed British colonial rule elsewhere in the world, including in Palestine. And then there is Ireland's more recent history, the civil conflict in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles, and the difficult sacrifices Ireland has made in the pursuit of peace, which some suggest offers a template to Palestinians and Israelis.
Miracles are hard to believe in, but it's worth remembering that we are currently living our own miracle on this island. And for all those in Israel and Palestine tonight,
the island of
it might
Ireland.
seem like it, but there's always hope. And we hope that your miracle comes soon.
Ireland has fought British colonialism, has experienced imperialism. We have our legacy of experiencing ethnic cleansing, forcible transfer, genocide through hunger and starvation. So Ireland has a natural affiliation when it comes to standing in solidarity with other colonised people. Of course, there are those on the island of Ireland who would find affinity with the Israeli state, but in many ways it is the stance of the Irish people is in standing strong in favour of Palestine and Palestinian liberation.
Beyond the shared history of oppression, what explains the Irish position
Here we go, we're gonna fucking pincer attack.
A grasp of reality. I think our military neutrality has a lot to do with that. When you see a piece of land and its people being bombarded by an extraordinarily well-resourced military, the call for peace is a pretty obvious one.
Our foreign policy has been very consistent for decades.
What the fuck is my army?
And not just on the issue of the two-state solution for Palestine, but our adherence to multilateralism. Ireland has had its own peace process, and to do that we had to get our diaspora on board. We had to have international friends to help us along the way. And I think the feeling in Ireland is the Palestinians don't have any friends.
The Irish are seen as advocates for Palestinian rights in a continent that has mostly stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel. However, Ireland's Conservative government has faced criticism from the opposition for not going far enough.
That the recitation of all of our interventions and charitable acts for the Palestinian people do not relieve you as a government of your primary responsibility to hold Israel accountable to the world for...
The government has been vocal, but its actions have been limited. It has not recalled its ambassador to Israel or cut diplomatic ties like a number of countries across the global south. Ireland may stand out in Europe, but the discourse in its politics and its media shows that its stance is hardly radical.
The discourse and the language that is used at a European level is echoed by the Irish government, and that in and of itself will find itself into the mainstream media. So we are viewed in Europe as being somewhat of an outlier, but that's still a relatively conservative position. We may say one or two words differently to our European counterparts, but that isn't a huge difference.
Ireland was very much behind most of the language around condemning Hamas, releasing the hostages, Israel's right to defend itself, but wanted to ensure that amongst all of that was the Palestinian civilians, that they would have their rights observed under international humanitarian law. It can use its small voice to ensure that the Palestinians are not forgotten, the civilians in Palestine, in Gaza, are not forgotten.
You've been watching a special edition of The Listening Post on the news coverage, the discourse surrounding Israel's unprecedented assault on the Gaza Strip, a story which has exposed deep divisions within European societies and differences between EU states. Watch this space for where this story goes next.
Minerals have up and gone.
Where's this fuckhead getting all this fucking shit from? Victory. Alright, let's watch some news without a guy who has a really annoying lisp. Sorry about that, folks. Let's listen to some compound media.
Decision, right? And they told me, like, make sure you just let everyone know to stay away from you if you just fall down. Oh shit!
Let's watch a documentary on Hitler and Stalin.
This channel is part of the History Hit network.
On July the 6th, 1940 in Berlin, Adolf Hitler celebrated his victory in Europe. His army chief called him the greatest warlord in history.
That was Wilhelm Keitel.
From Moscow,
called him the greatest.
Hitler's collaborator, the Russian leader Joseph Stalin, had sent his congratulations. In London, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was isolated. In Washington, the American president Franklin Roosevelt stood aloof. In the coming 5 years, everything in the relationship between these four men would change in ways that seemed unimaginable. While their nations fought a war of weapons, these four great warlords of the 20th century fought a war of the mind.
What started as a European war has developed into a war for world domination.
At the heart of this private war was a series of psychological duels in which they lied, schemed, charmed, flattered, and deceived to win. What was curious was that these duels took place not between enemies, but between men who at the time were allies. Yet their behavior was egotistic, tempestuous, monstrous, and politically, despite the rosy glow in which some are seen today, always selfish.
We shall never cease to persevere against them till they have been taught a lesson.
The duels of the warlords decided the strategy for the greatest battles in history. They were also the epicenter of a seismic shift in world power. From the age of European empires to the age of two ideologically opposed superpowers, with devastating consequences for hundreds of millions of people.
Turn the game volume up a little bit so I don't get strike on YouTube for watching copyrighted material.
Obersalzberg in southern Germany.
The
one of the world's loveliest places.
The Berghof.
It was here, in August 1939, that Adolf Hitler was thinking the unthinkable. Hitler had set his heart on invading Poland, and his generals had told him he must attack before the autumn rains came. But Britain and France had said they would go to war for Poland. One thing stood in Hitler's way: the fear that Russia would also turn against him and propel him into a war on two fronts. This was the very thing imprinted in Hitler's mind as having helped to lose Germany the First World War on 20 years before. There was only one way out: a pact with his greatest ideological enemy, Joseph Stalin.
Encirclements.
Hitler put out feelers to Moscow.
Crush,
though he little
annihilate
realized it, he was instigating a mental duel with Stalin, which over the next 2 years would decide the destiny of the Second World War. Stalin was deeply suspicious of Hitler's approach. He spent hours reading Mein Kampf, written 15 years before, underlining key passages, like Hitler's views of the Bolshevik leaders, men such as Stalin himself.
Never forget that the rulers of present-day Russia are common blood-stained criminals, that they are the scum of humanity.
But Stalin could see that Hitler was now desperate for a deal, and offering to send his foreign minister, Ribbentrop, to Moscow.
Ah, yes, Ribbentrop.
Stalin decided he would go with Hitler.
To meet Molotov.
History Hit is a streaming platform that is just for history fans, with fantastic documentaries covering fascinating figures and moments in history from all over the world. From the Battle of Trafalgar and the Revolutionary era, right through to the Second World War. If you are looking for your next military history fix, then this is the service for you. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts
I am
you
a
cannot
great
find anywhere.
student of
Sign up
military
now for a free
history.
trial. And War Stories fans get 50%
It's quite extraordinary. Military history
Just be sure to use
really
the code
quite
WARSTORIES.
unbelievable, really. It's really quite unbelievable. It's quite extraordinary.
Hitler's propaganda chief, Joseph Goebbels, noted in his diary,
22nd of August, 1939. Non-aggression pact with Moscow perfect. Ribbentrop in Moscow on Wednesday. That is something. We're on top again. Now we can sleep more easily.
On August the 23rd, Ribbentrop landed in Moscow. But Hitler needed one piece of reassurance. He sent his personal photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, to film Stalin's earlobes, to see whether they were ingrown and Jewish, or separate and Aryan. They were separate. Stalin passed Hitler's test. Shortly after midnight, on August the 24th, 1939, the Nazi-Soviet Pact was signed, and with it, a secret protocol under which Germany and Russia would carve Poland into two. Hitler phoned Ribbentrop.
Allies' base is under attack.
This will hit like a bombshell.
But, as Goebbels noted, it was not strength, but fear of Stalin knifing him in the back that had forced Hitler into history's biggest U-turn.
The Führer believes he's in the position of scrounging for favors, and beggars can't be choosers. In times of famine, the devil feeds on flour.
Our allies are being attacked.
Not good.
In the Kremlin, Stalin proposed a toast.
I know how much the German nation loves its Führer. I should therefore like to drink his health.
Frendo's base is under attack.
Ain't war hell?
Stalin was also acting from fear that Hitler would attack him. That evening, he told his inner circle,
of course, it's all a game to see who can fool me. He thinks he's outsmarted me.
Help your friend. Frendo's base is under attack.
Stalin had found a bedfellow for whose cunning he had held a long and sneaking admiration.
Our allies' base is
Back in
under attack.
1934, Stalin had observed Hitler eliminate his rivals within the Nazi Party in the so-called Night of the Long Knives.
Ah, yes, the Night of the Long
He remarked,
Frendo's base is under attack.
Did you hear what happened in Germany?
Help your friend.
Some fellow, that Hitler. Splendid. That's a deed of some skill.
Hitler had felt no such mutual admiration. In his early years in power, he was set on the dreams of Mein Kampf, an alliance with Britain's Sea Empire, while he expanded to the east and built his German land empire on the continent.
What a failure.
Only when that plan had clearly failed did Hitler begin to see in Stalin someone he might do business with. Stalin was the first of the two to be a mass murderer. His terrors killed millions. He once compared his victims with the boyar landowners massacred by Ivan the Terrible 400 years before.
Who's going to remember all this riffraff in 10 or 20 years' time? No one. Who remembers the names now of the boyars Ivan the Terrible got rid of? No one.
Well, it's
a week
been 80
before he
years and we
invaded
still
Poland,
remember.
Hitler made an eerily similar remark to his generals.
Who will care about the method?
Genghis Khan had millions of men and women killed by his own will and with a gay heart. History sees him only as a great state builder. And who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?
For both men, mass murder was just another weapon in the ideological struggle. The state, whether communist or Nazi, was supreme. Individuals were its disposable tools. They even extended this idea to their domestic lives. Hitler had secret mistresses, most notably Eva Braun. But in public, no woman could come between him and his nation. One of his secretaries recalled that he emphasized again and again,
"My lover is Germany."
Stalin did marry, twice, and had children. But the suicide of his second wife, Nadia, in 1932, further brutalized him. Echoing Hitler, he told an associate,
"A true Bolshevik shouldn't and couldn't have a family because he should give himself wholly to the party."
Stalin told his son, Vasily,
I'm not Stalin. Stalin is Soviet power.
Now, in August 1939, these two great ideologically opposed warlords were inextricably linked. 8 days after the signing of the pact, Hitler invaded Poland. Britain declared war. Winston Churchill rejoined the British cabinet.
The most extreme death metal and everything in between.
Stalin publicly supported his Nazi collaborator. He told the world,
"It is not Germany who has attacked England and France, but England and France who have attacked Germany."
I've been listening to a lot of Franz Liszt lately.
The enslavement of Poland further united the two extreme proponents of totalitarian violence. SS units killed 60,000 Jews and members of the Polish ruling class. It was Hitler's first experience of mass murder and profoundly influenced him. It showed him his followers would actually do it. Stalin's secret police, the NKVD, long versed in mass killing, would carry out similar massacres in the east of Poland. Among their victims were more than 20,000 Polish officers and political prisoners whose bodies would be discovered 3 years later. As their secret police mutilated Poland, the two dictators faced their destinies hand in hand. Over the next 2 years, in a mind war unparalleled in world history, they would both become gripped by a series of delusions that would lead them into colossal error and the bloodiest conflict there has ever been. Stalin had entered his pact with Hitler with open eyes. He never doubted he was supping with the devil. But he believed the pact would give the Soviet Union both protection and opportunity.
Basically are considered terrorist.
Just a week after the Nazis invaded Poland, he told his inner circle,
"A war is on between two groups of capitalist countries. Hitler, without understanding it or desiring it, is shaking and undermining the capitalist system. We can maneuver, pit one side against the other to set them fighting with each other as fiercely as possible."
Stalin was also eyeing up a further desirable outcome, the chance to expand his communist empire.
What would be the harm if, as a result of the rout of Poland, we were to extend the socialist system onto new territories and populations?
For Hitler, the pact also opened the door to conquest. He could now turn all his energy and attention to planning the invasion of France.
I have photos of you wearing
Joseph
that shirt.
Goebbels noted Hitler's hopes for a long-term collaboration with Stalin.
That will not look good.
1st of October 1939. Conference with the Führer in private. He is convinced of Russia's loyalty. After all, Stalin is said to pocket a huge profit.
Black Lives Matter has praised the stabbing of Derek Chauvin 22 times.
But Stalin saw no such loyalty in Hitler.
They say they wish that he was killed.
Mein Kampf was etched in his mind.
And encourage more people
Above
to try
all,
and kill him.
Hitler's youthful ambitions to conquer Russian territory for the new German Reich.
If we speak of territory in Europe today, we can primarily have in mind only Russia and her vassal border states.
And it's gone through the justice system, so this is absolute terrorism.
Because he calculated that Hitler might still one day turn on him, Stalin set out to build a line of buffer zones to protect himself against possible Nazi attack. He forced the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, to accept Russian garrisons. He told the Latvian delegation,
a group that
there has been an unexpected turn, but one cannot rely upon it. We must be prepared in time. Others who were not prepared paid for it. The Germans might attack.
Not condemns, that doesn't condemn, that actually encourages.
Stalin also tried to bully Finland into giving him a swathe of territory as a further buffer. The Finns refused. Stalin invaded their country. It was a disaster. Within days, thousands of frozen Russian corpses littered the snow. Finally, the Finns were beaten, but not before killing 125,000 Russian soldiers.
You must denounce Black Lives Matter.
Stalin sent in his political commissars to shoot the Soviet commanders. But the real fault was his own. His terror had got rid of the Red Army's best officers. As Goebbels noted, the Red Army's incompetence offered Hitler yet more comfort.
15th of March, 1940. The Russians can never become dangerous for us. If Stalin shoots his own generals, we won't need to do it. So far, we've had nothing but advantages from our alliance with Russia.
On May the 10th, 1940, Hitler, with his Eastern Front secured by Stalin, launched his blitzkrieg to the west. The German army sliced through France, Belgium, and Holland. The British were driven from the continent. For Hitler, it was a triumph. For Stalin, a disaster. Nikita Khrushchev, later Russia's prime minister, recalled Stalin's reaction to Hitler's lightning victories.
I remember being with Stalin. He was extremely nervous. He was racing around, cursing like a cab driver. He cursed the French. He cursed the English. How could they allow Hitler to defeat them, to crush them? Stalin not only saw the superiority of the German army, he knew that the Germans sensed our weakness because of the war we had fought with Finland.
On June the 17th, 1940, the French government sued for peace. The long-lasting and mutually destructive war of the capitalist and fascist states, which Stalin had so gleefully anticipated, was over in a trice. The next day, as Hitler celebrated in Munich with the Italian dictator Mussolini, Stalin, with gritted teeth, sent his congratulations on the Wehrmacht's splendid success.
The Weimar Republic. The Wehrmacht.
For Hitler, victory had lanced a boil. Germany's defeat in the First World War had been avenged. Now, for the first time in his political life, he wanted a rest from conquest, and, reverting to his old instincts, peace with Britain.
But say Hitler wanted peace and Britain refused to have peace 4 times. 4 times he asked for peace to end the war, and 4 times the British said no. We want war.
Hitler makes many reservations on the desirability of dismantling the British Empire, which he considers even today to be an important factor in world equilibrium. Hitler is now like the gambler who,
Hitler wanted to work with the British Empire,
would like to leave the table, risking
and be allies with them, but the British said no. We want to go to war with you.
But Stalin feared that Hitler,
so they dragged the war out for another 5 years. That's all Britain's
might immediately be
and the
tempted
French's
by
fault.
his long-held ambition,
mainly the
of
French,
expanding to the east.
The French put so much pressure on the British to not give peace terms to Hitler.
Stalin now embarked
they made the war
on a
last so much
risky
longer
double
and
strategy,
allowed at least
going
50
on a
million more
10-day
people
land
to die.
grab to expand and protect his empire,
Fucking
while
French
also
people, we can't
trying not to provoke
trust the
Hitler.
French. Or the
He
Dutch.
occupied the Baltic states and Bessarabia, the
Mineral
northern
field
province of
depleted.
Romania. This was allowed under the Nazi-Soviet pact. But he also decided to invade another Romanian province, Bukovina. It was not assigned to Stalin under the pact. Hitler's chief of staff, General Franz Halder, noted Hitler's alarm in his diary.
25th of June 1940. The issue of Bukovina raised by Russia is new.
and goes beyond our agreements with the Russians.
At precisely this moment, Stalin's duel with Hitler took a second, unexpected twist. The Soviet leader received his first letter from Winston Churchill, who'd become British Prime Minister on the day Hitler launched his Blitzkrieg. It was an appeal to Stalin to beware of Hitler and come over to Britain's side. Stalin did not reply. Instead, to show Hitler his loyalty, he reported Churchill's approach to Berlin. Hitler now began to make his own interpretation of these two pieces of evidence: Stalin's rapacity in Romania and Churchill's approach.
Our army be scrapped.
Before the war, Hitler
Your
had
forces are
described
under
to his
attack.
adjutant his secretive mental processes.
Bear in mind that my brain works like a calculating machine. Each person who makes a presentation to me introduces into this calculating machine a small wheel of information. There forms a certain picture or a number on each wheel. I press a button, and there flashes into my mind the sum of all this information.
Now the Hitler calculating machine began to build a conspiracy theory, which would have devastating consequences. On July the 6th, 1940, Hitler, the victor in Europe, returned to Berlin to a hero's welcome.
A wonderful July sun shines all over the place. An unimaginable ecstasy fills the city.
Your forces are under attack.
Crowd roars. The station looks like a great banqueting hall. Then the Führer arrives. A roar of joy fills the station.
On this day, Hitler's army chief, General Keitel, called him the greatest warlord in history. But amid his triumph, Hitler was increasingly tormented by one overriding thought. As far as he was concerned, he had won the war. So why did the British not recognize that fact and make peace with him?
Exactly.
He began to convince himself that there must be some external factor that Britain and Churchill were allied.
He wanted to make peace with the British, and the British said, no, we're going to keep fighting.
A week after the Day of Glory in Berlin, General Halder recorded a momentous development in Hitler's reasoning.
Stupid Brits.
13th of July, 1940. The Führer is greatly puzzled by Britain's persistent unwillingness to make peace. He sees the answer in Britain's hope in Russia.
On July the 19th, 1940, in a speech to the Reichstag, Hitler made his final plea for peace to Britain. Churchill and the British were not interested. Later that day, a further wheel of information from the United States entered Hitler's mind.
Hey, help your friends.
Franklin Roosevelt was nominated by the Democrat Party to run for president for the third time. His acceptance speech contained an attack on Nazi aggression.
Our allies are being attacked.
Hitler was now seeing specters across the globe.
22nd of July, 1940. Führer's view. Reasons for continuation of war by Britain. 1. It hopes for a change in America.
Research complete.
2. It puts hope in Russia. Stalin is flirting with Britain to keep her in the war and tie us down.
Hitler retreated to the mountains of Obersalzberg.
Obersalzberg, Zberko.
The delusion was building.
Our allies' base is under attack.
Here, the summer before, he'd been dreaming up his pact with Stalin.
Frendo's base is under
Now
attack.
he suspected him. At the end of July, he announced to his generals the result of weeks of agonized reflection.
Our allies are being attacked.
31st of July,
Our allies'
1940,
base is under
11:30,
attack.
Delta. Führer concludes Russia is the factor on which Britain is relying the most. Something must have happened in London. The British were completely down. Now they are home. With Russia smashed, Britain's last hope would be shattered. The sooner Russia is crushed, the better. If we were to start in
Well,
May
there's no more gas with
1941,
this one.
we would have 5 months to finish the job.
It was, as yet, only an idea. But two enormous delusions.
Our
The
allies
first
are
that he had
being
already
attacked.
won the war, and the second that some secret deal was brewing between Britain and Russia, were leading Hitler down the road to catastrophe.
The minerals, Frendo's base is under attack.
For Hitler, the invasion of Russia was still only a contingency plan, should all other means of forcing the British to make peace fail. The autumn of
Mineral field
1940 now brought 4 long months of frustration.
Your upgrade is done.
The RAF defeated the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain.
Base is under attack.
Plans for a cross-channel invasion were quietly shelved.
Frendo's base is under attack.
Yet despite these setbacks, Hitler kidded himself that he'd done enough.
Hey, help your friends.
15th of October, 1940. Führer on military situation. War is won. Rest is mere question of time.
But Hitler could still not force the British to come to terms.
Our allies' base is
And he had
under
become
attack.
split-minded
The
about
minerals
Russia,
have up and gone.
moving troops nearer her borders, but also wanting Stalin to join him in the fight against Britain. Hitler's adjutant,
Frendo's
Major
base is
Gerhard
under
Wenzel,
attack.
noted in his diary.
Hey, help your friends.
4th of November 1940. Führer visibly depressed. He conveys the impression that at the moment he does not know how things should proceed.
Then came the
Our
defining
allies'
moment.
base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked.
On November the 12th, 1940, the Russian Foreign Minister, Vyacheslav Molotov, arrived in Berlin at Hitler's invitation.
Hey, help your friend.
Molotov was given the full Nazi fanfare, but the conversations that followed were tense. Hitler's purpose in summoning Molotov was to offer Russia a share in the spoils of victory if it helped him finish off the British. He told him,
England's final capitulation is just a matter of time. Fragments of its empire will be left all over the world. It's time to think about division of this property without a master after our victory.
But Stalin wasn't interested in joining Hitler's war or speculative carve-ups of the British Empire. His instructions to Molotov were to find out what Hitler's troops were up to in Finland and Romania, places right on his doorstep.
Hey, help your friends.
Molotov put the questions bluntly. Hitler gave vague reassurances. Despite the superficial courtesies, Molotov's cold arrogance and his needling on the question of territory in Eastern Europe infuriated Hitler, and it reinvigorated him.
Our allies are
15th
being
of
attacked.
November
Frendo's base
1940.
is under attack.
The talks had shown where the Russian plans were
Help
heading.
your friends.
Molotov had let the cat out of the bag. Führer was really relieved. It would not even remain a marriage of convenience.
Our allies are being attacked. Our allies' base is under attack. Hey,
When
help
Molotov
your
reported
friends.
back to Moscow on the talks in Berlin, Stalin realized that Hitler was turning against him. In early December,
Our
he
allies
told his
are being
generals,
attacked.
We know that Hitler is intoxicated by victories and believes that the Red Army will need at least 4 years to prepare for war. Obviously, 4 years would be more than enough for us, but we must be ready much earlier. We will try to delay the war for another 2 years.
But Hitler was moving at a pace Stalin could not imagine. On December the 18th, 1940, he issued War Directive Number 23.
Honestly, a lot
The
of
German
Japanese
Wehrmacht must be prepared
rock and roll
before the
bands
ending
are
of the
so
war
much
against
better than
England
American
to
rock and
crush
roll right now,
Soviet
because they
Russia
use jazz
in a rapid
chords and all these
campaign.
amazing chord changes. There's like 16 chord changes in
The invasion
just the
date was set
chorus
for May
of a pop
1941,
song from Japan.
but behind the order
I really believe
lay uncertainty.
getting into that
18th of December
it's
1940.
much more
I'm convinced that the Führer himself does not know how it would turn out.
so many more.
He's very
different chords and
concerned at the lack
scales
of clarity as regards the strength of the Russians.
just
Hopes for an
simple
English
pop
surrender.
songs.
Does not think America will enter the war.
Hitler had finally made the momentous decision, a war on two fronts, the very thing he'd sought to avoid when he first made his pact with Stalin. But he'd deluded himself that one front, Britain, was already won. It simply required a knockout blow against Russia for the British to understand their defeat. Hitler's line of reasoning never began to occur to Stalin. He believed that Hitler either had to beat Churchill or make a deal with him before he could think of turning against Russia. In early 1941, he told Politburo members,
"We must cherish no illusions. Fascist Germany is clearly preparing for an attack on the Soviet Union. Why does Hitler want to make an agreement with England? Because he wants to avoid war on two fronts."
Stalin was trusting Hitler to act rationally. And to fight Britain and Russia at the same time was clearly irrational. But Stalin failed to realize that despite their similarities, there was one profound difference between him and Hitler, which made his perfect logic irrelevant. He himself was a methodical, calculating, hard-working man, a master of detail, personally signing death lists at one extreme, and at the other, keeping the tiniest details of gold production in his notebook. Hitler, by
Good luck
contrast,
and have fun.
was at heart an idle dreamer. He once described why he'd loved the mountains of Obersalzberg.
When I go to Obersalzberg, I'm not drawn there merely by the beauty of the landscape. I feel myself far from petty things. My imagination is stimulated. When I study a problem elsewhere, I see it less clearly. I'm submerged by the details. By night at the Berghof, I often remain for hours with my eyes open, contemplating from my bed mountains lit up by the moon. It's at such moments that brightness enters my mind.
Beautiful, beautiful.
For Hitler, the big idea was never to be disrupted by small facts. And having made up his mind to attack Russia for tactical reasons,
I will be visiting
the original
the
and biggest
Obersalzberg next
idea
year.
of all was reasserting itself.
I'll be posting
The
those
ideological
videos on
struggle against Jews and Bolsheviks.
The Berghof.
Throughout 1940, Hitler had hardly mentioned the Jews. But on January the 30th, 1941, in his traditional speech marking the anniversary of the Nazis' rise to power, he repeated a chilling threat he'd first made before war broke out.
Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Völker noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis
In order to make sure that the situation does not come about, we will have to annihilate the Jewish race in Europe.
At a series of conferences with his generals in the spring of 1941, Hitler made his aims brutally clear.
3rd of March 1941. The forthcoming campaign will lead to a showdown between two different ideologies. The Jewish Bolshevik intelligentsia must be eliminated. 30th of March. We must forget the concept of comradeship between soldiers. This is a war of extermination.
While Hitler planned his annihilation, Stalin still believed he had at least a year to prepare. On April the 13th, 1941, he moved to protect his back, signing a pact with Hitler's ally, Japan. Stalin was thrilled with his coup and got happily tipsy with the Japanese foreign minister, Matsuoki. But he was still following his double strategy. As he said goodbye to Matsuoki, the German military attaché in Moscow was present. Stalin told him,
"We must remain friends, and you must now do everything to that end. We will stay friends with you, whatever happens."
But Stalin knew such long-term friendship was a fantasy. Soon after, he told graduates of Moscow's military academy,
"There will be war, and the enemy will be Germany."
But that war would not happen yet. Up until this point, Stalin's reasoning was irreproachable. He'd foreseen the eventual conflict with Germany and was steadily preparing for it.
Oh, gold bases on this map?
But a bizarre twist would now propel him into his own huge delusion. In April 1941, Stalin received his second letter from Winston Churchill. Like the first, it would have an electrifying effect on his duel with Hitler. Churchill told him the British had received intelligence reports of German troop movements, which could only be preparations for a Nazi attack on Russia. Stalin was instantly suspicious, not of Hitler, but of Churchill. He told his army chiefs,
"Britain is threatening us with the Germans, and threatening the Germans with the Soviet Union. They're playing us off against each other."
Then on May the 10th, 1941, in one of the war's strangest moments, Hitler's deputy, Rudolf Hess, took off from Germany in a Messerschmitt fighter, flew across the North Sea, and parachuted to the ground in Scotland. At that time, Stalin's assistant, present at his key meetings, was Yuri Chadayev, who noted down and later typed up everything Stalin said. From Chadayev's secret, unpublished record, it is possible to piece together how Churchill's message and Hess's flight began to lead Stalin towards a conspiracy theory, which would have immensely destructive consequences for his country. 3 days after Hess landed, Chadayev recorded the interpretation Stalin gave of these two events.
On the one hand, Churchill sends us a personal message in which he warns us about Hitler's aggressive intentions. And on the other hand, the British meet Hess, who is undoubtedly Hitler's confidant. What is the conclusion then? Apparently, when Churchill sent us his personal warning, he believed that we would activate our military machine. Then Hitler would have a direct and fair reason to launch a preventive crusade against the Soviet Union.
In Stalin's eyes, Churchill's warning was deliberately designed to provoke
you got
a
it
war
all
between
wrong,
Germany
Joe.
and Russia. And Churchill was meeting Hess to tell Germany it should strike first. As he brooded on this idea, Stalin concluded that Churchill was not the only provocateur. On June the 5th, he told his military chiefs,
England, France, and America see in Germany the only hope to get rid of Bolshevism, and therefore helped the Nazis in all possible ways in their crusade to the east.
Finished learning.
This deduction, that the democratic nations of Europe and America were ganging up on him, became a blinding article of faith. Throughout May and June, intelligence reports gave warning after warning of imminent German attack. Stalin dismissed every one of them as part of the great conspiracy to provoke him.
Upgrade complete.
On June the 12th, he told his generals,
I am certain that Hitler will not risk creating a second front by attacking the Soviet Union. Hitler is not such an idiot.
The minerals have up and gone.
Millions of German troops gathered within striking distance of Russia's borders. Operation Barbarossa, as it was now called, was scheduled for 10 days' time, June the 22nd. The duel between Hitler and Stalin was reaching its endgame. As Operation Barbarossa drew near, Hitler convinced himself he was fulfilling his destiny.
Mineral field depleted.
On June the 16th, 1941, with 6 days to go, he told Goebbels,
that which we have spent our lives fighting, we will now annihilate.
The minerals have
Whether
up
right
and
or
gone.
wrong, we must win. And when we have won, who will ask about the method?
That day, a Soviet spy in the Luftwaffe sent yet another warning of imminent German attack. Stalin retorted,
Tell the source in the staff of the German Air Force to his mother.
Mineral field depleted.
On June the 18th, Stalin's two top generals, Zhukov and Timoshenko, pleaded with him for a full alert. Stalin reminded them that Hitler could not attack without first doing a deal with Britain.
You have to realize that Germany will never fight Russia on her own. You must understand this.
On June the 20th, 2 days to go, Hitler chose his fanfare for victory. A passage from Liszt's symphonic poem, Les Préludes.
Les Préludes.
Though Stalin still refused to see it coming, it was now apparent to his closest associates that the Nazis were on their way. On June the 21st, one of them, Georgy Dimitrov, was in Moscow.
Our allies are being attacked.
Rumors of an impending attack are multiplying on all sides. Have to be on guard. Called Molotov this morning. Molotov says the situation is unclear. There is a major game underway.
On June the 22nd, the same day Napoleon had once invaded Russia, Hitler followed in his footsteps.
Our allies' base is under attack. Frendo's base is under attack.
At 3:30 a.m., the attack begins. The greatest deployment in world history. The Führer is as if released from a bad dream. The nearer we get to the decisive
Our allies'
moment,
base is under attack.
all his tiredness seems to disappear. I'm
Frendo's
given a
base
deep
is under
insight into
attack.
his thoughts. We have no option but to attack. This cancerous abscess must be cauterized. Stalin will fall.
At 7 a.m., I was urgently summoned to the Kremlin. Germany has attacked the USSR. The war has begun.
Our allies'
Stalin
base
to
is
me.
under attack.
They attacked us without declaring any
Hey,
grievances,
help your friends.
without demanding any negotiations.
Frendo's
They
base
attacked us
is under
viciously,
attack. Our allies
like
are being
gangsters.
attacked.
Stalin's great conspiracy theory that the democracies were plotting to provoke him was shattered.
Your forces are under
His
attack.
misreading of Hitler, the man he viewed as a rational strategist, was total.
Hey,
Hitler
help
had
your
completed
friends.
an extraordinary mental journey. A year before, he had seen the invasion as a tactic to make Britain crumble. Now the ideology with which he had set out 20 years before had once again taken pride of place.
Your forces
He wrote
are
to his
under attack.
Italian ally, Benito Mussolini.
Let me say one more thing, Lucian. Since I struggled through to this decision, I again feel spiritually free. The partnership with the Soviet Union was often very irksome to me, for in some way or other it seemed to me to be a break with my whole origin, my concepts, and my former obligations. I am happy now to be relieved of these mental agonies.
Our allies are being attacked. Our allies' base is under attack.
While Operation Barbarossa cleansed Hitler, it only shocked
army
and
be
depressed
scrapped.
Stalin. His fury was directed equally at Hitler and at his own generals, whose positioning of their forces, insisted upon by Stalin himself, had allowed the Germans to smash through Russian defenses.
Fucking DTs.
This is a monstrous crime. Those responsible must lose their heads.
NKVD units were sent to the front to arrest the guilty men. The commander, General Pavlov, was shot. 5 days later, Stalin remarked,
Lenin founded our state, and we've fucked it up.
the Red Army, taken by surprise because Stalin had refused to allow it to prepare, was in headlong retreat. 2 weeks after the invasion, General Halder noted in his diary,
3rd of July, 1941. It is probably no overstatement to say that
Hey,
the Russian
help
campaign
your
has
friends.
been won in the
Finished
space
learning.
of 2 weeks.
militarily, Barbarossa turned the war on its head. And his experience with Hitler also had a vital psychological effect on Stalin. He later remarked,
When you're trying to make
Our
a decision,
allies are being
never
attacked. Mineral
put
fields
yourself
depleted.
into the mind of the other person, because if you do, you can make a terrible mistake.
The minerals have up and gone.
Stalin had lost the mind game. Hitler had outwitted him. But Hitler would be the eventual loser.
Our army be scrapping.
His decision to attack Russia
Hey,
signed the
help
death
your
warrant
friends.
of his own dreams of empire
Our
and
allies
of European
are being attacked.
imperialism in general.
The minerals have up and gone.
And it would create an unlikely coalition of three ideologically opposed warlords to fight him. But the relationship between the two great Democrats in that coalition
Hey,
began with another
help
mental
your friends.
duel, which ran in parallel with the duel of the dictators. It too was riddled with mutual suspicions, false promises, and evasion. It too would shape
Our
the destiny
allies
of
are
the
being
world.
depleted. Our allies' base is under attack. Hey, help your friends. Vespine Geyser exhausted. Friendo's base is under attack. Well, there's no more gas with this one. Base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. The minerals have up and gone. Mineral field depleted. The minerals have up and gone. Hey! They're attacking our base! Your upgrade is done. Hey! They're attacking our base! Help your friends! Our allies' base is under attack! Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Mineral field depleted. The minerals have up. Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Mineral field depleted. Our allies are being attacked. Base is under attack. The minerals have up. Hey, help your friends. Our allies' base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Friendo's base is under attack. Upgrade complete. Our allies are being attacked. Your forces are under attack. Hey, help your friends. Mineral field depleted. Our allies are being up and gone. Friendo's base is under attack. Hey, help your friends. Your forces are under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Our allies' base is under attack. Hey, help your friends. Vespine Geyser exhausted. Mineral field depleted. Our army be scrapped. Well, there's no more gas with this one. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Your forces are under attack. Hey, they're attacking our base. Base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Our army be scrapping. Your forces are under attack! Your upgrade is done. Hey, help your friends. Our army be scrapping. Your forces are under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Mineral field depleted. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. The minerals have up and gone. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are mineral field depleted. The minerals have up and gone.
Add-on.
Hey, help your friends.
Add-on complete.
Our allies are being attacked.
Command center.
Hey, help your friends. Our army be scrapping. Our army be scrapping.
Command center upgrade complete.
Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Friendo's base is under attack. Mineral field depleted. The minerals have up and gone. Friendo's base is under attack. Hey! They're attacking our base! Our allies' base is under attack! Base is under attack! Our allies' base is under attack! Hey! They're attacking our base! Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack! Base is under attack! Hey! Friendo's base is under attack! Our allies are being attacked. Base is under attack. is under attack. Our ally base is under attack. Hey, help your friend. Your forces are under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Friendo's base is under attack.
(1942). The entire world is at war. The Axis and the Allied forces are bombing non-stop. We are in the midst of the biggest conflict in history, a war which will cause almost 50 million deaths. In Rome, the Pope, Pius XII, is confined to his palace, far from the chaos of war. As the spiritual leader to hundreds of millions of Catholics around the world, he must guide the Church through one of the darkest periods of our history. Because 1,000 kilometers away, in Poland, Hitler has already begun carrying out his gruesome plan: the extermination of all Jews in Europe, whom he would gas to death in concentration camps, all carried out in top secret. And yet the Pope is well aware, as he is one of the most well-informed men on the planet. The world awaits any kind of grand gesture or speech condemning these atrocities.
Sa seule arme, c'est parler. La seule façon capable de peser sur les événements, c'est de parler.
But the Pope remains silent. Surely, in principle, Nazism and Catholicism are fundamentally opposed.
C'est deux planètes complètement différentes. Si vous lisez Mein Kampf, vous comprenez qu'il y a quand même peu de points communs avec l'Évangile.
Excluding their points in common with Hitler, the Catholic Church will find that. As early as the 1930s onwards, dozens of priests become Nazis. The Vatican will let it happen. The Church will even make a pact with the Führer by signing an international agreement.
Pillon a toujours dit, bien avant l'arrivée d'Hitler, qu'il signerait un concordat avec le diable en personne s'il fallait, si c'était nécessaire pour sauver les intérêts de l'Église.
you will discover the story of certain men of the church, fervent
Good luck and
admirers
have
of
fun.
Hitler, who championed the cross of Christ as well as the swastika.
Il terminait ses sermons au nom du Père, du Fils et du Saint-Esprit à Hitler, qui n'est pas tout à fait dans le droit canon romain. Et il avait aussi une autre phrase, c'était Adolf Hitler comme notre prophète Jésus-Christ, ce qui est un peu original.
After the war, networks within the Vatican will help the biggest Nazi criminals to escape Europe. Among them, Josef Mengele and Klaus Barbie.
We're talking about criminal activity here. Yeah? I think we should point this out in this case. It's not just about forgiveness and clemency, helping somebody who is in hiding, giving him some food, yeah? But organizing new papers under false identity for Holocaust perpetrators trying to avoid justice by Italian authorities and Allied authorities. This goes far beyond to be the good Samaritan.
This is the story we are about to tell you. The story of an institution that many thought to be above all suspicion. The story of their fall into collusion with evil itself. All ambiguity of the links between the Vatican and Nazism had begun well before the Second World War. To understand this, we must go back to the beginning of the 1930s. More precisely, January the 30th, 1933. Hitler had just been elected Chancellor of Germany. But this is not enough for him. His goal is to impose a dictatorship. To accomplish this, Hitler must change the constitution, and to do that he must have 2/3 of the vote of the Reichstag representatives. His one hope is to have a political party, one that holds great power within the assembly. The Centrum, 100 or so centrist representatives, Catholic representatives.
Hitler doit, s'il veut être un totalitaire, comme il le prétend, il doit rallier à son régime ce pilier de la société weimarienne que constitue
la constitution.
Il a besoin de restaurer une forme d'unanimité sur laquelle va se construire le totalitarisme.
But the problem is, in principle, that it would be impossible for the Church to give its voice to Hitler. Nazism and Catholicism are fundamentally opposed.
L'évangile, c'est d'abord l'accueil de l'autre, aimez-vous les uns les autres, etc. C'est pas un appel au meurtre collectif et des appels guerriers au nom d'une nation qui serait une nation exceptionnelle entourée de sous-hommes.
But more is needed to discourage Hitler. If he wants full powers, he must convince at all costs the Centrum.
Hitler va chercher à gagner les catholiques en multipliant des discours élogieux sur l'idée chrétienne. Il va promettre d'édifier son nouveau Reich, ce troisième Reich, sur des bases chrétiennes.
But these fine words will not be enough to appease the German Catholics. However, everything is at stake. So here is the Führer's plan. It's not only the German Catholics that he needs to seduce, but their leader, the Pope himself. From the outset, this mission seems to be a lost cause, and yet we see that on the Vatican side, the idea will be rather welcomed. We find ourselves in Rome, Italy. Wedged inside the capital, the Vatican City, the Catholic Church's seat of power. At its head, since 1922, the Pope, Pius XI. a pope with an obsession to sign an agreement with Germany to protect the interests of German Catholics.
Des négociations pour aboutir à un concordat d'usage avaient été ouvertes avec la République allemande par les Autriches depuis 1919. Et alors, ça avait commencé, ça avait avorté, mais il n'y avait pas encore de concordat d'usage. Et à peu près chaque fois qu'un nouveau gouvernement allemand était formé, eh bien, c'était renoncé soit par les sièges, soit par le gouvernement allemand. Et évidemment, l'échange était toujours le même, c'est-à-dire je te donne un concordat, et en échange, le parti catholique me soutient au Reichstag.
Hitler could thus agree to sign the Concordat on the condition that he had the assured backing of the full powers. And it seems that the idea of negotiating with the Führer does not repel the Pope. Because for Pius XI, Hitler is not yet the devil. He sees him, above all, as a fierce anti-communist. A man who could prevent Stalin from invading Europe and suffocating the Church.
Help
the
your
Vatican's
friends.
incessant fear.
Quand Hitler arrive au pouvoir, Pie XI ne pense pas que ce soit nécessairement catastrophique et pour une part, par anticommunisme. N'oubliez pas, il arrive au pouvoir en 1933. 1933, c'est le moment où Staline saigne à blanc l'Ukraine.
Our allies are being attacked.
Des années que les bolcheviks sont au pouvoir, et c'est anéanti en Russie. Pas grand-chose. Et vous voyez arriver Hitler débordant une déclaration d'anticommunisme, il va se dire pourquoi pas.
Cet anticommunisme virulent d'Hitler va jouer un rôle dans les illusions que va nourrir le pape à l'égard d'Hitler.
To negotiate with Hitler, the Pope sends one of his closest associates, Eugenio Pacelli. He's the Secretary of State. He's the number 2 of the Vatican City.
Mineral field
and the Pope
depleted.
had chosen him for this high-risk mission because he knows Germany very well. He was ambassador for the Vatican for 13 years.
Our allies are being attacked.
Vous imaginez à l'époque, au tout début
Your
des
forces
années
are
30,
under attack.
l'importance des relations entre le Saint-Siège, représenté par le nonce apostolique, le jeune Eugenio Pacelli, et l'Allemagne, qui est le plus important pays catholique du monde.
But the Concordat is far from being signed. Elsewhere in Germany, the Zentrum have just decided on a policy full of implications. On March the 23rd, 1933, in Berlin at the Reichstag, the German Catholics have voted to give full powers to
Our
Hitler.
army be scrapped.
The Führer now has free rein to impose his dictatorship. It's impossible for historians to know in what ways the Vatican and Eugenio Pacelli put pressure on the Zentrum.
On ne sait pas s'il y a une promesse ou pas, mais on sait bien qu'il est pratiquement impossible que la question du concordat n'ait pas été au moins discutée. Et elle devient un élément parmi d'autres du vote de plein pouvoir.
Pas de document probant, sinon une note du prédécesseur de Pacelli à la secrétaire d'État, qui était le cardinal Gaspard, qui écrit une note en 80
Our allies are being attacked.
au niveau interne de la Pacelli pour dire qu'il faut aller de l'avant avec une négociation concordataire et que si possible, il ne faut pas hésiter à, si le gouvernement allemand le demande, de sacrifier le parti catholique. Donc ce qui prime, c'est l'intérêt supérieur.
The minerals have up and gone.
L'intérêt du parti du catholique.
Several days later, the German church will once again give Hitler what he wants, allowing Catholics to also be Nazis.
Hey, our minerals have up and gone.
2 years earlier, the bishops had banned this. Only with the desire to sign the Concordat, the church will give in. From the 28th of March 1933, German Catholics can officially be Nazis. Dozens of priests will thus join the NSDAP, the
Mineral
Hitlerite
field
party.
depleted.
At the Vatican, no one can see anything left to say. Quite the contrary.
Donc, lorsque la condamnation du parti est levée par les évêques, le nonce en Allemagne et au Vatican et le secrétaire d'État Pacelli sont plutôt soulagés qu'on ait enfin retiré cette condamnation. Parce qu'enfin, cette levée de la condamnation ouvre la voie donc aux négociations concordataires.
But will the Vatican really dare to sign an international agreement with the Nazis? Especially as in Rome, during the negotiations with Hitler, the Pope receives some worrying information about the situation in Germany. The Jews there are being persecuted. Their shops are being boycotted. They are excluded from all public employment, ousted from the economy. The Führer is putting in place the first anti-Semitic measures that will become the foundation of his policies. Voices are raised to warn the Vatican.
They're attacking our base!
Among them, an outraged woman writes a letter to the Pope. She pleads him to intervene. Her name is Edith Stein. Her journey is surprising. Edith was born into a Jewish family. She is an intellectual and a feminist. She has, unlike most other women of this period, a doctorate and is a professor at Münster. At 30 years old, Edith Stein converts to Catholicism. She is recognized as a woman of profound faith and an exemplary life. In April 1933, this is the beginning of her letter.
Holy Father, as a child of the Jewish people who has become by the grace of God a child of the Catholic Church 11 years ago, I dare to express to the Father of Christianity what is tormenting millions of Germans.
Our allies are being attacked.
C'est une lettre qui est très forte, puisqu'elle demande, elle explique la situation d'injustice, d'inhumanité que vivent les Juifs.
Through its call to boycott, the government is pushing many people to desperation. I was aware of 5 suicide cases following these attacks. I am persuaded that this is hinting at a general phenomenon that will take still many more victims.
But above all, Edith Stein pleads the Pope to intervene. If he doesn't, she threatens, he would be an accomplice to these horrors.
The responsibility falls in large part upon those who have pushed them to this extremity. It also falls upon those who remain quiet on the subject. We fear the worst for the image of the Church if it continues to remain silent.
C'est une très belle lettre, très courte, très dense, très intense au fond, où elle dit la responsabilité de ces actes ne tombe pas seulement sur ceux qui les ont commis, mais aussi sur ceux qui se seront tus.
Et elle finit par demander, par prier et des catholiques d'Allemagne et du monde sont tournés vers la papauté.
The Pope receives this letter on his desk, and he will read it, but he will choose not to do anything. His only response was to let Edith Stein know that he'd asked for God's blessing for her. In fact, without knowing it, Edith Stein had sent her letter to the Vatican at the worst possible time.
Elle l'envoie vraiment au moment où on négocie le concordat. Donc, sa lettre, probablement, on peut l'imaginer, le pape, mais l'urgence n'est pas là. L'urgence, c'est de négocier le concordat. Très rapidement, l'urgence, ça devient on sauve ce que l'on peut sauver, et ce qu'on va essayer de sauver, c'est l'action catholique. Donc, il n'y a pas de place dans cette configuration mentale, politique, diplomatique de l'époque, de ce 1933, pour une intervention en faveur des Juifs.
The Vatican will soon be reassured. Eugenio Pacelli was about to finalize this concordat that he so desired. Hitler accepted the terms of the agreement.
Hey, help your friends!
Rome, 20th of July 1933. Around the table, next to Pacelli, representing the Pope, Franz von Papen, the Vice-Chancellor of the Reich. He represents the Führer. This agreement, which contains 34 articles, is a relief for the Vatican. It assures them officially the respect of the rights of German Catholics, as stated in Article 1. Article 1. The German Reich guarantees freedom of profession and public exercising of the Catholic religion.
Our allies are
it
being
recognizes
attacked.
the right of the Catholic Church to organize and administer its affairs autonomously. But in reality, the real winner of this international treaty is Hitler. The Church offered, on a silver platter, the final piece he was missing, the stature of a true head of state.
Vespin Geyser exhausted.
That's how Hitler said steak. He said stock. That's how you say steak in German.
Our allies are being
Stock.
attacked.
A signé un concordat avec le pape, avec le Saint-Siège, à peine 6 mois après son arrivée au pouvoir. C'est quand même peut être considéré comme un succès diplomatique, indiscutablement. Ça donne à Hitler et au gouvernement nazi une sorte de respectabilité morale sur le plan international.
Aux yeux du monde et aux yeux des catholiques allemands, le concordat signifie bien que le Vatican a réussi à s'accorder avec Hitler.
Le Saint-Siège fait figure d'autorité morale. Vous voyez, donc si ce Saint-Siège si respectable signe un concordat avec Hitler, c'est la preuve qu'Hitler ne peut pas être aussi méchant qu'on nous le dit.
But this honeymoon period between the Vatican and the Nazis will not last long. Hitler wants to position himself as a dictator. Very quickly, he violates the Concordat. He dismantles the organizations of the church and arrests and sometimes assassinates Catholic opponents. At the same time, he attacks the Jews once again with a new arsenal of anti-Semitic measures. The Nuremberg Laws of 1945. The Jews lose their German nationality and most of their civil rights. Mixed marriages are forbidden. In Rome, Pope Pius XI is not ignoring these persecutions. 4 years after having entered into a pact with the Führer, the Pope becomes disillusioned. He comes to realize who Hitler really is.
Under attack.
So for the first time, he decides to confront him. His weapon, a prosecution speech against Nazism. Mit brennender Sorge, in English, with burning concern.
Hey, help your friends. Base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked.
En 1937, à un moment où il n'y a plus de liberté en Allemagne, une prise de parole publique hostile au nazisme, en soi est un acte qui est pratiquement révolutionnaire en 1937, parce qu'il n'y a plus, lorsqu'on ne peut plus écrire librement, lorsqu'on ne peut plus parler librement, lorsque quelqu'un ose dire une parole de vérité, en cela, elle met à mal le régime.
This impactful text is prepared in utmost secrecy. The censorship of the Nazi regime is omnipresent.
Our allies are being attacked.
Des histoires
Our allies'
incroyables.
base is
On
under
a
attack.
imprimé le texte en allemand dans des imprimeries allemandes, mais des petites imprimeries dans certaines régions où on était effectivement sûr que les amis catholiques du coin allaient le jeu dans un secret absolu. Les premiers exemplaires dans la valise, la sacoche de prêtre qui était discrètement planqué dans un compartiment de train en espérant que personne n'allait fouiller ses affaires. C'est un vrai roman d'espionnage.
The 21st of March 1937, the text is read in all the churches in Germany. Hitler does not react, but from now on, to the eyes of the world, Pius XI appears to be a challenger to Nazism. Only it is not him who will lead the church when the war begins. Will then the Vatican dare to defy Hitler?
Our allies
and
are
play
being
its role
attacked.
as defender of humanity while an entire people get exterminated?
Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help
March
your friends.
1939, just 3 months before the war. In Rome, a new pope had just been elected. Pius XI died of a heart attack. And the new pontiff is far from being a stranger.
Our allies are being attacked.
He has chosen the name Pius XII. In reality,
Your
his
upgrade is
name
done.
is Eugenio Pacelli, the Vatican's former number 2.
Help your friends.
This man's entrance into power will mark a halt in the political battle of his predecessor against Hitler, because
Our
Pius
allies are
XII
being
himself
attacked.
is a man that is far more careful.
D'un côté, il est vrai que l'on
The minerals
lit le
have
bras
up
droit
and
de
gone.
Pie XI, celui qui a donc fait avec Pie XI toute la politique du Saint-Siège durant toutes les années 30. D'un autre côté, on sait aussi
Our army be
que
scrapped.
Pacelli a un caractère assez différent
Mineral field depleted.
d'Achille Ratti, de Pie XI. Il a un tempérament beaucoup moins autoritaire, ou en tout cas qu'il n'est pas du genre à taper du poing sur la table comme le faisait Pie XI.
Foncièrement, c'est un diplomate, on peut croire.
The minerals have up
Qui
and
est par
gone.
nature enclin à toujours rechercher le compromis, l'entente plutôt que le conflit. Au fond.
Hey,
Je
help
pense
your
que les
friends.
problèmes peuvent se résoudre par la voie de l'entente, de la discussion, du compromis.
Except that while Hitler prepares his final solution, the voice of compromise will not suffice.
Our allies
À
are
partir
being
de janvier
attacked.
1942, donc la conférence de Wannsee, la guerre change de nature puisque on ne se contente plus à ce moment-là d'envahir des pays et de se battre armée contre armée,
Hey,
mais
help
on
your
va
friends.
exterminer un peuple.
To accomplish this, Hitler puts in place a true industrial process. Jews are arrested by the hundreds of
allies are
thousands
being
during
attacked.
big raids. They are brutally packed into overflowing animal trucks and driven towards Poland to specially designed death camps on a massive scale where the majority of Jews would be gassed to death.
Help your friends. Our allies are being attacked.
This genocide had to take place in top secret. In principle, it was impossible for the Pope to know about these atrocities committed by the Nazis. Except in reality,
Hey,
Pius
help
XII
your face
will
is
very
under
soon
attack.
know. Because the Church, omnipresent in Europe, is a vast network of information. Wherever there is a Catholic, there is a potential spy
Our
in the
allies
service
are
of the
being
Vatican.
attacked.
Il a d'abord le réseau de ses ambassadeurs à Paris, à Berlin, à Madrid. Il a des ambassadeurs, donc il est déjà très bien informé par ses ambassades. Surtout, il y a le réseau des évêques. Ces évêques sont forcément une mine d'informations exceptionnelle. Et puis ajouter les catholiques eux-mêmes,
The minerals have up and
ce qui
gone.
se passe chez eux. Donc voilà 3 sources d'informations. La source diplomatique, la source épiscopale et la source, je dirais, pastorale, qui font que le pape, en effet, est probablement le
Hey,
dirigeant le
help your
mieux informé
friends.
de l'époque.
Et donc il y a une masse d'informations qui arrivent. Donc on commence quand même à percevoir qu'il se passe quelque chose de monstrueux à l'Est, sans toutefois en avoir la preuve formelle.
But this official proof, the Pope
Our
will
allies
very
are
soon
being
receive.
attacked.
Like in March 1942, with this report coming from the Jewish World Congress. In this report is a highly detailed index of the exterminations, country by country.
Hey, help
The
your
exact
friends.
figures given show 92,000 Bessarabian Jews executed by the Nazis. Later, the Pope will receive confirmation of this alarming news, this time by the Polish
Our
government
allies
in
are being
exile.
attacked.
In regard to the number of Polish Jews exterminated by the Germans, we estimate that it has surpassed 1 million. It is primarily the elderly, the disabled, women and children who are taken, which is proof that this is not deportation for work, but that the deportees are being put to death using various methods in places specially created for this purpose. All of these reports urge Pius XII to condemn Hitler. The Pope is seen as the person who could change the course of history.
Il a évidemment
What
ni
the fuck is going on?
armes atomiques, ni armée, ni puits de pétrole, ni territoire à défendre. Donc il n'existe pas sur le plan politique. Sa seule arme, c'est la parole. La seule façon pour un pape de peser sur les événements, c'est de parler. C'est ça qu'on appelle une autorité morale.
But for the time being, the Pope has decided to keep quiet. He is not the only one to have received these reports. The Allies have also been informed. On December the 17th, 1942, Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin publish a declaration, a searing text in which they clearly identify the Jews as the target of Nazis. In every country under German occupation, the Jews are being transported on trains in horrific conditions with inconceivable brutality. The number of victims of these bloody acts of cruelty are hundreds upon hundreds of completely innocent men, women and children. We condemn in no uncertain terms this bestial policy of cold-blooded extermination. Now that the whole world knows, the Pope no longer has a choice. He must speak. A severe, unequivocal condemnation is expected. On the 24th of December 1942, as the Sovereign Pontiff begins his traditional Christmas speech, an entire people is waiting. But they are going to be disappointed, as Pope Pius XII barely speaks on the matter at all. In a lengthy speech of over an hour, the issues of the Jews is addressed in one single sentence, during which he does not even specifically name them. He simply alludes to the
talora solo per ragioni di nazionalità o di stirpe sono destinate alla morte o ad un progressivo deprimento.
Il ne prononce pas le mot juif dans son radiomessage, ce qui évidemment aujourd'hui paraît étrange et lui a valu bien sûr des reproches.
Les Juifs auraient souhaité une dénonciation solennelle et retentissante du génocide et qu'ils ne l'ont pas obtenu.
Ce silence restera à jamais.
So how to explain this silence? A silence that, once again, threw a dark veil over the Vatican. Pius XII would have been nervous about retaliation, because in Holland, a few months earlier, in July 1942, the public condemnation of Nazism by a group of bishops had devastating effects.
Les évêques hollandais ont publié une lettre pastorale, vous voyez, qui dénonçait le sort fait aux Hollandais juifs, vous voyez, en disant qu'il y avait là une persécution, que c'était inadmissible. Et en fait, la réaction allemande a été limpide. Jusqu'à cette date-là, les juifs baptisés, les juifs chrétiens, étaient exemptés de la déportation. Quand les nazis ont su que les évêques catholiques dénonçaient leur politique à l'égard des juifs, leur première réaction avait été de faire déporter les juifs de confession catholique.
Une semaine après, des centaines de catholiques d'origine juive ont été emmenés à Auschwitz et gazés immédiatement.
Amongst the victims, there was Edith Stein. Remember, this German woman who 9 years earlier had written the famous letter to the Pope begging him to break his silence. According to certain specialists, the tragic event in Holland would have weighed heavily on Pius XII.
Le pape, quand il entend ce compte-rendu-là, quand on lui dit ça, évidemment, il faut se mettre à sa place. Il se dit, mais si moi je dis la même chose, alors qu'est-ce qui va se passer? Ça sera plus la Hollande, ça va être quoi? Toute la France, ou toute l'Allemagne, ou toute l'Europe.
But that is not the only reason. Something else also paralyzes the Church. The Catholics are not hugely fond of the Jews, and this is nothing new.
Toute l'Église a été coupable, les catholiques, coupables d'un anti-judaïsme qui n'est pas donc un antisémitisme, parce qu'il ne touche pas du tout à la biologie. Là, il ne s'agit pas du tout de racisme. Il s'agit d'un ressentiment, d'un mépris, d'une concurrence que les chrétiens ont parfois violemment, parfois brutalement, exercée à l'égard des Juifs depuis 2000 ans.
La Bible véhicule, si l'on veut, l'idée que c'est l'ensemble du peuple juif qui est responsable et qui doit supporter la faute de la décision d'avoir voulu la mort du Christ. Cette idée est véhiculée et va nourrir, si l'on veut, un sentiment populaire, une hostilité populaire, si l'on veut, à l'égard du peuple juif.
À l'égard?
This contempt, this anti-Judaism, the Jews will pay the price for this once again a few months later. But this time, the persecution will happen practically on the Pope's doorstep. We're in the Jewish ghetto in Rome, in the western part of the city. On the night of the 15th to the 16th of October 1943, the sound of German military boots approaches. The Gestapo enters the ghetto through the Via del Portico d'Ottavia. They arrest 1,259 people, 200 of whom are children. The majority of those are deported to Auschwitz and will be gassed. Only 15 people will survive. Pius XII, yet again, keeps quiet. No public condemnation. No symbolic gesture of compassion.
Ce qui peut être davantage reproché à Pie XII, c'est le fait d'être resté chez lui au Vatican au moment de la rafle des Juifs de Rome. Alors ça n'a pas empêché d'essayer de prendre position, d'essayer de négocier avec les autorités allemandes, de réclamer que cesse cette rafle. Mais il n'est pas sorti du Vatican pour descendre dans le ghetto comme il l'a fait lorsqu'il est descendu dans le quartier de San Lorenzo, qui est le quartier qui est bombardé par les Alliés.
3 months before the rounding up of the Jewish ghetto, Rome was bombed, causing 1,600 deaths. At that moment, Pius XII rushed to the centre of the crowds to comfort the Romans, the majority of whom were Catholic.
Il faudra beaucoup de temps pour que le Vatican comprenne qu'il ne peut pas intervenir que pour les seuls catholiques, mais qu'il doit intervenir aussi pour le genre humain.
Of course, the Pope hid hundreds of Jews, even inside his own private residences. But he would not publicly speak out to encourage his flock to follow suit. However, in Rome, more than 4,000 Jews were hidden in convents and monasteries. Risking their lives, Catholics allowed entire families to be saved. In other words, many believers did not wait for a message from Pius XII. They acted on their own conscience.
Il me semble que l'échec de Pie XII, c'est à ce niveau-là qu'il s'est joué, parce qu'il n'a pas su, justement, inventer le geste ou le mode de parole qui, dans l'Europe du temps, aurait eu
Our allies
de
are
l'importance.
being attacked.
The problem is that in the absence of a clear course of action from their spiritual leader, other Catholics then chose the dark side. And this led to mistakes and misconduct. Berlin in October 1943. Today, a new issue of the biggest Nazi propaganda magazine is being released.
Hey,
a
help your
newspaper
friends.
translated into 25 languages, with 2.5 million copies published and distributed throughout occupied Europe. Signal. And on the front page this month, the German soldier in uniform standing right next to the eagle and the swastika. But this man is not German. He
Upgrade
is French.
complete.
His name, Mayol de Loupé. And even more astonishing, although he is wearing the uniform of the Waffen-SS, he is first and foremost a Catholic bishop. This man, so willingly lending his image to Hitler, is proof that Catholicism and Nazism can be compatible. This is a godsend for the Führer, who takes the opportunity to plaster it all around Europe.
Les nazis sont plutôt païens et la religion pour eux, c'est vraiment... ça peut être une opposition aux nazis parce que du fait de leur catholisme. Donc, de montrer que les catholiques se battent avec eux, c'est gagnant pour les Français, les Italiens et d'autres catholiques travers l'Europe, les Espagnols aussi, montrer que Dieu est avec eux, qu'on est du bon côté. Les nazis sont du bon côté. Ça, pour ça, c'est important. En termes de propagande, c'est important, oui.
Maël de Loupé is part of this Nazi turning point at the start of the 30s. He has a long-standing obsession, Bolshevism, and most definitely shares his hatred of the Reds with the Hitlerite regime. And also, he shares this hatred with the Vatican, since the Vatican never ceases to condemn communism, much more so than it condemns the Führer.
Du pape que du côté des évêques, des catholiques. On entend depuis le XIXe siècle que le mal, c'est le communisme, ça devient évidemment le bolchevisme. Depuis le début de la Révolution russe, le pape a pris plusieurs fois la parole pour dénoncer l'idéologie communiste, pour dénoncer les crimes du communisme. Donc, il est évident que cet anticommunisme, nourri par les événements eux-mêmes, va certainement jouer un rôle dans l'attirance de certains pour le nazisme qui se pose comme un parti anticommuniste.
Except Maël de Loupé will not just be attracted by Nazism. In the name of anti-Bolshevism, he is ready to actively lend a hand to Hitler in the hope that this will help the church to finally get rid of the Reds.
Hey,
and
help
soon
your friends.
He will have just the opportunity. We're in the Soviet Union in the winter of 1941. For months, the country has been fighting the bloody German invasion in Operation Barbarossa. 4 million Axis soldiers have invaded the USSR by surprise. But the war is brutal. Hitler needs more men. He is recruiting from all over the occupied territories. But the French are unwilling. The Führer must find them a solution.
L'intérêt de l'armée allemande, c'est que tout se passe bien. Et comme elle sait que pour des Français, être sous uniforme allemand, ça pose un problème quand même. C'est pour ça qu'ils embauchent Maël de Loupé. C'est pour atténuer les problèmes et puis pour servir de recruteur aussi, de dire voilà, moi je suis prêtre, j'y vais en grand uniforme, pourquoi pas vous, ayez confiance en moi. Donc comme ce sont souvent des milieux catholiques et un peu réactionnaires, ils font confiance à monsieur le curé.
The problem is that Maël de Loupé needs the authorization of the church. But apparently, one of their bishops joining Hitler's side does not pose any problem.
Our allies are being attacked.
Not for Cardinal Suard, his superior in Paris, a close friend of Maréchal Pétain. He gives him his permission without batting an eyelid. Not even for the Vatican, who Maël de Loupé contacts through Monsignor Sibilia, a cardinal close to Pius XII.
Mineral field depleted.
He sends him his authorization and even his blessing. In October 1941, Maël de Loupé leaves for the front line, along with hundreds of French youth and
The minerals
Nazis.
have up and gone.
Their trains
Mineral
are
field
covered
depleted.
in explicit slogans. Death to the Jews, Heil Hitler. At nearly 70 years old, the new crusader finds himself as a military chaplain on the Russian plains. His mission, to spew out his party line. Amen Hitler.
Le dimanche, je suis Seigneur, donc forcément des messes sont organisées. C'est Maël de Loupé, bien sûr, qui officie. Et effectivement, il faut
The minerals
sur le
have up
mysticisme
and
du
gone.
nazi, sur la justesse de la cause. On combat le bolchevisme, on combat l'ennemi rouge. Et effectivement, ils terminaient, on a su ça par les survivants qui l'ont raconté, ils terminaient ces sermons au nom du Père, du Fils et du Saint-Esprit, et Hitler, ce qui n'est pas tout à fait dans le droit canon romain, donc c'est un peu hétérodoxe. Et il avait aussi une autre phrase, c'était Adolf Hitler comme notre prophète Jésus-Christ. C'était pour justifier l'injustifiable. Donc l'engagement des Français sur place, Maël de Loupé n'était pas à s'encombrer à quelques formalités près.
In total, Maël de Loupé will spend almost 3 years on the Eastern Front. He then settles in Germany until the end of the war. As the Allies arrive, he hides in a monastery, but is quickly found and arrested. At the end of his trial, Maille de Lopé will serve 4 years in prison for enemy intelligence. In theory, with the defeat of the Germans, one could think that this would also put an end to these somewhat clouded Church-Nazi relationships. But you will see that in reality, even years after the fall of Hitler, some very highly positioned men in the Vatican will enter into outright complicity, organizing the escape of war criminals. We return to Rome. The war is over. The Italians, too, have discovered the unbearable images of the millions of victims of the just liberated extermination camps. There is utter disbelief.
Our army be scrapped.
In the Vatican, the Pope still has not reacted publicly, nor has he condemned these horrors. And after 3 years, life has resumed its course. It is 1948. A stone's throw from the Holy See, this is the Via della Pace, the Road of Peace. We are at house number 20, at the headquarters of the German church, Santa Maria dell'Anima. Monsignor Alois Rudal lives here. He runs one of the branches of the Assistant Pontifical Commission, created at the end of the war to welcome refugees.
They wanted to help. They saw the millions of Europeans on the road, on the street.
Help your friends.
Homeless, displaced persons, survivors of the Holocaust. It was very chaotic and very difficult situation in Europe in those years. About more than 20 million people homeless and on the streets. It was a massive problem. And so the Catholic Church, the Vatican, the Pope himself realized we want to do something as well. We want to help these people.
And so, on this day, Alois Rudal hears a knock at the door. It's a refugee coming to ask for aid. His name is Franz
Mineral
Stangl.
field depleted.
But this man is by no means a refugee like the others. He has the blood of hundreds of thousands of Jews on his hands.
Criminal career really started out when he was involved in the so-called euthanasia killings in Austria. And then he was transferred from a euthanasia killing center to Treblinka extermination camp in Nazi-occupied Poland, where he became the commandant of Treblinka. And in Treblinka, between 1942 and 1943, 1 million people were murdered.
Our allies are being attacked.
He was one of the main perpetrators of this crime.
After the war, Stangl is arrested and imprisoned in Austria. The law is preparing to judge him, and he knows he faces a heavy sentence. So he escapes in May 1948. And so begins his 1,000-kilometer journey, destination Rome. Stangl has heard that inside the Vatican there is a network that could help him flee Europe. They have even given him a contact, the famous Alois Rudal.
He came to Rome and he knew he had to somehow find this Bishop Rudal. Yeah? He had no real idea where exactly he is, or he didn't even know the correct spelling of his name. And poor coincidence, he ran into a former comrade, a former SS man that he knew in Rome on a bridge. And, asked him, what are you doing?
Help your friends!
Yeah, I'm looking for Rudal. I'm on the way to Rudal. And the former SS man could
The minerals have our allies are being attacked.
In other words, at the Santa Maria dell'Anima church, Rudal not only helps the poor and destitute, he also deals with Nazi criminals and does so with full knowledge of the situation.
Our allies' base is under attack! Mineral field depleted.
Entre les bons et les mauvais, il faut que je les aide, ils viennent chez moi, ils me demandent de l'aide, donc
Stangl was a mass murderer, a Holocaust who killed hundreds of thousands of people.
It should be said that the Bishop Houdal is also an admirer of the Nazi regime.
Houdal a toujours été pro-nazi. En tout cas, allié des nazis. Il a toujours pensé qu'il faisait le lien entre les nazis et les chrétiens allemands. Alors, il fabrique derrière cette bonne volonté-là pour cacher ce qui était en réalité avec des criminels de guerre.
Houdal's speciality is supplying passports for war criminals so that they can get out of Europe. And Stangl is in great need of this service.
Attacking our base!
It is in the name of the Vatican and with the help of the Holy See that Houdal will proceed. This here is proof of the document that was procured.
The minerals have up and
It
gone.
is a letter written by the Pontifical Commission with the Vatican coat of arms as a header. It is dated the 17th of August 1948. He is asked to kindly deliver the passport to the following person, Stangl.
Base is under attack.
The request is addressed to the International Red Cross.
Mineral field depleted.
At the time, Europe is in such chaos that it is the Red Cross who is entrusted with the task of providing passports to refugees who wish to emigrate. But to ensure success, what could be better than a letter like this, with the guarantee of the Vatican?
We know from witnesses,
the minerals have up and gone.
Former officials of the Red
Our army be
Cross
scrapped.
That priests and Buddha himself asked personally, or went there himself to ask for travel documents. And the Red Cross for a number of people that he wanted to help. And of course, in those cases, the officials could not say no. How could we refuse the application of a bishop? That's impossible.
The result, a few weeks later, Houdal hands Franz Stangl his passport. It is his guarantee that he will be able to escape justice. However, this war criminal doesn't celebrate, because he was bothered by one small detail.
The papers were not really issued under a false name. They are issued for a certain Paul Stangl. So the middle name was turned into the first Stangl protest.
Mineral field depleted.
Bishop, you made a mistake. Somebody made a mistake. Maybe
the minerals
Red
have
Cross
up and gone.
Because my name is not Paul Stangl.
Your forces are under attack.
Don't worry. It's better to let sleeping dogs lie. Because you realize you're wanted as a war criminal. It's better to be Paul Stangl than Franz Stangl because they're looking for Franz Stangl.
But they would not find him, as the former Nazi left Europe and headed to Syria to start a new life. He would not be found for another 20 years in Brazil, and there he will finally be condemned to lifetime in prison. But Houdal did not just help one war criminal. Numerous others also passed through this Vatican network. Amongst them, the most wanted in Europe, such
they're attacking
as
our base.
Adolf Eichmann, the lead organizer of the death camps.
Our allies' base is
Dr.
under
Mengele,
attack.
the head doctor of Auschwitz.
Frendo's
And
base
Klaus
is under
Barbie,
attack.
the butcher of Lyon.
Hey, help your
Was
friends.
Pope Pius XII aware of his bishop's schemes? Impossible to know, as the Vatican refuses
Your
even
forces
today
are under
to
attack.
declassify their records. On the other hand, one report is unequivocal. It is dated back to 1947
Our allies are
and
being
comes from
attacked.
the American Secret Service. Its author, Vincent LaVista.
He did a very good job. He looked into all these structures. He figured out how these people come to Italy over the mountains, to Tyrol very often, on the Austrian-Italian border, and then how they stayed in monasteries, how some of them had contacts to former Nazis there or fascists there, and then how they got to Genoa or to Rome.
And what he discovered was that, in part of the
Vespine Geyser
Vatican, there
exhausted.
were numerous members suspected of being involved in the escape of war criminals. 22 in total. many of them bishops.
Base is under attack.
And in very first place
Hey,
is written
help your friends.
Monsignor Houdal. His address and even his telephone number are given. Again, it is impossible to
allies
know
are
for
being
sure
attacked.
that Pierce had any knowledge of this report, but according to experts, it is almost certain.
Well, hey, help your friends.
Un rapport comme ça va évidemment sur le bureau du secrétaire d'État, qui est le Premier ministre du pape. Sauf qu'à cette époque, il n'y a pas de secrétaire d'État, puisque le secrétaire d'État est mort en 1944 et Pie XII n'a pas voulu le remplacer. Pie XII disait, au fond, le secrétaire d'État, c'est moi. À partir de cette boutade du pape lui-même, on peut considérer qu'un rapport important comme celui-là est arrivé sur son bureau. Alors, qu'en a-t-il fait? L'a-t-il lu? L'a-t-il confié à des gens? Qui saura jamais?
In any case, the Pope did not react publicly, as the Vatican affairs are dealt with internally. Alois Houdal would resign 5 years later, in 1952. Even today, Pius XII is shamed in silence.
Is under attack.
All of it. His silence during the genocide, but also his refusal to speak out after the war, and to explain himself when he no longer needed to be in fear of retaliation. It would not be until his death in 1958 that the people would finally hear his regrets. This is how his will opens. Have mercy on me, Lord, and grant me your forgiveness. The knowledge of my weaknesses, failures, and sins committed during such a long pontificate, in such terrible times, has revealed my shortfallings and my disgrace. I humbly ask forgiveness of all those I have offended, wronged, and outraged.
Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. Our allies' base is under attack. Help your friends. Our allies' base is under attack. Our allies' base is under attack. Hey, help your friends. Our allies' base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Upgrade complete. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Mineral field depleted. The minerals have our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Friendo's base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies' base is under attack. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our army be scrapping. Our allies are being attacked. Hey, help your friends. Our allies are being attacked.
Alright, so you're 4 and 3. I'll take it. It's 1 over 500. I'll be back next time. Peace, everyone. Say your prayers, call your grandparents, call your parents, tell them you love them before it's too late. God bless you all. Check out my music, alvalanchor.com, Alvalanchor, Google Alvalanchor, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music. Just Google Alvalanchor.